Okay. Thank you.
All the infrastructure. Morning, John.
Do you want to build a snowman?
Oh, it's so nice and warm in here.
You're welcome, Mrs. Jason.
Oh, my goodness, thank you.
Welcome, you're welcome.
Thank you, thank
It's
you.
always a concern.
Oh, I was gonna bring my gloves.
You try.
Warm, good.
We're good, we're good, Don.
We had a
We're
deal
good.
this morning.
Yeah, we had a
so.
deal. Yep. We're
Aim to-
good. Let's
we
make
aim
a
to
deal.
please.
We came through.
Heat?
Good
Good thing, because I only got my winter coat, otherwise
See?
thought about throwing a hoodie on. I didn't.
Right, well, that's kind of where I'm at, I'm like. It's a lot of paper. We will call the meeting to order. Can we stand for the pledge?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible,
With liberty and justice for all.
Great, thanks so much. Roll call, Mary Ann,
Here.
Scott,
I'm here.
Brian,
Here.
Dirk,
Here.
Danny. Here. Peter,
Here.
and I am here. May I have a motion and a second to approve roll?
So moved?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, that brings us to the study session.
All right, good morning, everybody. We'd like to thank everybody that's here and online this morning, and we're ready to start our budget season. Well, it started for us at district office about a month and a half ago. But we're here to make our first presentation to the board today regarding the 25-26 budget. And then there will be subsequent presentations to the board as we have a clearer picture of revenue and expenses for as we get through the spring. So as per tradition, we start with a Saturday morning workshop to kind of lay the groundwork and the foundation for what the 25-26 budget is going to look like, knowing that we still have some uncertainties regarding some of our funding sources. So with that said, I would like to turn it over to our Assistant Superintendent for Finance and Plant Operations, Mr. Feldman.
Thank you, Dr. Genestri, and welcome to everybody for our first budget study session. As we're going to kind of work through this and take a look at first kind of the revenue side and then the expense side. And what I would say is at any point in time throughout the presentation, if you have a question, you can throw something at me or something, I'll be happy to answer it. So we'll work through it that way. So Dr. Genestri, if you could just hit the next slide, please. First and foremost, just to kind of frame it out for you as far as our annual budgetary calendar. These are important dates as we kind of move forward to get to a vote, to get to a time when we vote on the school budget elections in May. As you know, our revenue side of the budget is driven in large part due to school taxes. So our final tax cap calculation is due to the state and the Office of the State Comptroller in March 1st, 2025. So we'll work with that office to make sure that we are in compliance there and that our tax cap calculation is done correctly and on time. For those that might be interested in running for the school board candidate nominating petitions are due to district office on April 21st, 2025. The terms of Mr. Leibel and Mr. Rabinold are up in June 30th of 2025. And the next two board seats will be a 5-year term for the board. The last day for you as a board to adopt the proposed budget is April 25th. Our property tax report cards are due on April 28th. We have to do a required public hearing on the proposed budget sometime between May 6th and May 13th. And the annual, as I mentioned, school budget vote and school board election is on May 20th, 2025. Dr. Genestri, next slide, please. So for us, this is, and Dr. Genestri kind of touched on it in his intro, we've really started to kind of attack the budget in January and in this month in February. As you know, the governor came out with her executive runs in terms of state aid. We have an initial property tax cap calculation that we'll share with you. Our COS team, including Dr. Genestri, Dr. Wilson, Dr. Shaibi, myself, and our district treasurer, Nicole Kuss, have been very busy meeting with administrators and department heads to review budgetary needs. And then next week, we'll have our initial BOCES participation meeting to kind of discuss what our BOCES budget will look like next year. Our BOCES budget annually this year runs at about $4.5 million of our budget from that standpoint. So we'll go through the BOCES participation meeting and get an update on that on Thursday and have that for you when we come back in March. So today, February 8th, Saturday, we will present to you a program maintenance budget. That basically means everything that is currently in the budget will remain in the budget. We'll go over the executive proposal on state aid, and we'll look at some budget development objectives and priorities. And then we'll come back and tweak our budget based upon our conversations today. Any updated information, we'll present to you an update in the March study session, which is March 11th. And then finally, we'll do another and final budget study session update on April 8th as part of the April study session. And then the board will vote on the on the budget, on the 2025 budget on April 22nd, 2025. And as I mentioned, the school board budget election and budget vote is on May 20th. And also on that day, if you remember, we're going to do our vote for our Panther mascot as well. So the vote happens from 7 o'clock to 9 o'clock on that day. So when we build a budget, there's a bunch of kind of things that we kind of look at and take into consideration through our processes. The first is really to establish some boundaries. First and foremost, from a programmatic standpoint, we want to make sure that the Sweet Home Core remains. We look at things like class sizes. We look at numbers of sections that are offered, things along those lines. And then we have to be, tie that into and be fiscally responsible when we create our budget. We look to create a budget, and the board has been a long time in support of this, a budget that falls below or at the New York State tax cap. And then, we also have an opportunity this year, and we'll share it with you, to discuss the possible use of rollover funds from this year's tax cap. Because if you remember this year's budget, we did not go completely to the cap. Our tax cap number this year was 3.95%. We went out at about 1.8%. So we do have the availability to use some of those carryover funds to help us in next year's budget. We have to start to, yes, sir. That's all right. What do you got?
Is this carryover thing something relatively new?
No, it's been available since the tax cap has been,
Really?
yes.
I
Yeah.
don't remember it in the discussions in the
Yeah.
past.
Well, traditionally, Mr. Ravenel, we've always gone right to the cap, so we've not had it as an available option to us. This year we do, and we'll talk about it. There's a formula that goes with it. It's the lesser of either. Go ahead, I'm
You
sorry.
don't get 100% of it. You get some portion.
You
of
get
it,
a
right?
percentage of it, yep.
Have we done that in the past 5 years?
We have not.
Okay, so this is the first.
Correct,
Okay,
correct.
Thank you.
So we have to look from and on a revenue side, we have to kind of start to project revenue. We look at things like state aid, and we look at obviously the governor's executive proposal. We look at sales tax receipts, and then we look at other potential income. On the expense side, rather, we look at, again, enrollment and staffing. Staffing and benefits and salaries really make up a large chunk of our budget. And then we look at, going forward and any other expenses that we foresee with some major budgetary impacts coming up. So then with the end mind, keeping the end in mind here, that we project the bottom line and consider any alternatives that we might have and begin to set priorities about things that we look to want to have into the budget going forward. Next slide, Dr. Ginestri. So today what we'll do is we'll present a program maintenance budget with the best estimates that we have to date. We will look to pinpoint all of our revenue projections. We'll have a discussion about the tax cap. We'll look at use of reserves. We will isolate major expenditure increases from the present school year. We'll discuss the impact of retirements that we've had to the budget. We'll look at priorities and next steps. We'll also look at federal funding too, as we get into this. We'll look at all of the federal funding we receive in terms of title grants, IDEA grants, special education grants, and things along those lines. Because as you know, we went through a short freeze based upon the current administration, and going forward, the uncertainty of those funds and how it might impact our budget.
Are we done with all the COVID monies that we were getting back?
We are done with all the COVID. In federal funding, COVID ended on September 30th, 2024.
That's it.
We are done with COVID money.
So any money we would have gotten back, we've already gotten back, and.
Yes, yes.
'Cause I know you
Money
had a
back
bunch
for
of-
what?
Well, you had a bunch of things out there.
So there were 3 different grants, right? The first grant was the CARES grant. The second was the Carissa grant. The third was the American Rescue Plan. And between those 3 grants, over the course of time, we got about $5.4 million. We did receive, and I don't know the number off the top of my head, but some significant dollars back from FEMA for reimbursements for cleaning materials. Why can't I think of the word?
PPE.
Thank you, PPE equipment and things along those lines. So any money that from COVID that we've expected to receive, we've received it, and there is no more federal funding coming from that standpoint. Mr. Ravenel.
From Washington, when I was there, they talked about this freeze or pause, right? And that the school issues were exempted from that, although they said there may be some withdrawal problems or issues with it. Does that make sense to you?
So the last that I've heard, generally, the process is when we receive funds, we get an allocation of funds, and I'll just use Title I as an example. We get about $1 million, a little over $1 million in Title I funding. We put together a spending plan for that title, those title funds. It's submitted to state ed, they approve it, and then we submit, when we have expenses, we submit a form that asks to get money back from the state. And from what I understand, that may be delayed. So we may get, we're still entitled to our money. Our money may not come in a timely fashion. It may come past June 30th, our closing date.
Okay.
That's the best I know right now, more so than anything else. But from what I understand, the funding that we currently have in place will remain intact for this school year. Going forward, not so certain.
Okay.
Next slide, Dr. Genestri. So on the revenue side, there are really four major areas that impact that side of the budget. Again, state aid, our property tax and tax cap, pilots payment in lieu of taxes that are set up through the town's IDA, sales tax, and then the use of any reserves to close potential budgetary gaps. And then, again, as I mentioned, we do receive significant dollars in terms of federal funds from title grants, IDA, the universal pre-K grants, and also the expansion grant. Yes, sir.
I'm sorry, I have a lot of questions this
That's
morning.
okay.
but I didn't do the calculation myself. State aid versus local tax properties, roughly what percent of the revenue are each of those categories? Is it on our sheet here?
Yeah, it's on your sheet, but I can. So, our real property taxes, well, it doesn't have a percentage. So we're at, this year we're at $54 million in terms of real property taxes on a $100 million budget. So you're at 54%. And then from an aid standpoint, just foundation aid, we're at $23 million. So you're at about 23%, somewhere in there.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
I get asked that question a lot.
No, that's fine. No problem.
Thank you.
Dr. Genestri, next slide, please. So this is kind of a closer look at our state aid year-to-year comparison. And I won't read all of the columns, but I'll highlight a couple of things here on it. You can see in total state aid last year, this year, sorry, we have $34,692,000 in total aid in our budget. In the executive runs, our basic foundation aid increases from $23,530,000 to $26,250,000, which is an increase of about $2.72 million. We do have an increase in excess costs and transportation aid, due largely in part to our contracted transportation, which, as you will soon see, is quite the battle for us. Our building aid, we are receiving more building aid as our last capital project really starts to hit the books. So our total aid on the budget this year in the executive run is $38,247,000, which is an increase of about $3.55 million. Now, what I will say, if I could just finish just one second, Mr. Johnson, the basic foundation aid, if you remember correctly, last year in the executive run, we were promised, and I don't remember the number, we were promised a certain dollar amount. And then the budget, the state budget passed after we passed our budget here, and we were docked about $320,000 for, it was basically for a number called TAPFU, Total Aidable Pupil Foundation Unit. It's basically the number of kids that count towards our overall foundation aid. So when we were docked about 73 kids, which in turn translated to about $320,000 that we didn't have in the budget. So on Wednesday of this week, our business officials group is getting together and we're going to work through the executive proposal and take a look at all of our numbers and try and get a better sense of where our foundation aid will end in the final state budget.
And Mr. Belmont,
Go ahead, I'm
and prior to the budget, if the board remembers, prior to the budget being approved by the board, we were already docked $300,000 because the governor pulled back on the promise to fully fund foundation
That's
aid.
correct.
So we took about a $620,000 hit last year. that
We
weren't
were in time to pull back the $300,000, obviously, but we were starting this budgetary year at a deficit of $320,000 based upon that TAPFU number. Mr. Johnson, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. Mr. Feldman, I think I remember hearing you mention recently that you were concerned that the transportation money for this year, that they're proposing for the next year, we probably had more coming for this year.
So if you look at the executive run, it's the executive run, and I don't have them in front of me. That number incorporates what we believe we'll get from that standpoint.
Okay.
Basically, when the executive run was done in January, we were still working through state aid to get our ST3, our Form FT, which was our transportation form, cleaned, which means that they accepted everything that we had in there. And based upon those numbers, we believe that we'll get that number in terms of transportation. So when the next run of aid comes out in February, we are, later this month, we are hopeful that that number will reflect that.
Okay, good, thank you. And on a thought on that, I attended the NYSBA virtual conference yesterday. And one of the things they said, the governor was putting forth a proposal to try and have the aid figures come out with as the November run and forget the rest of the runs. NYSBA was obviously against that.
Yeah, there's a November run that state ed puts out based upon the formula. Then there's the January run that the governor puts out. Then the House has put out one in February, and then we wait to see how the budget hashes out in April. So, it's nice this year that you will not approve the budget until April 22nd. So I'm hopeful that that'll give us a little bit of a fighting chance if they can get the budget done. The timing is better this coming year than it was last. So we got kind of caught last year, to be perfectly honest with you. So
That was another thing they brought up, and they didn't expect the budget to be done on time. And they gave specific examples of why. Yeah, I know. I think I said something worse than that at the time. But
Mr. Feldman, can I just
Yes.
ask, did they ever get, last year when they left our foundation aid, they said, okay, we're gonna leave it kind of alone. But then we're gonna get a committee together to examine it. Did they ever really do that
they did. They got the Rockefeller Center Committee together.
from that?
If you could tell me, I don't
I
know.
wondered if there was any influence
Yeah,
that
they
we're
were-
gonna
Very
feel
long
from that.
report came from that.
No, I read the report. It
Yeah,
was
I-
crazy long.
I don't know. Nobody seems to, like, in my business office circles, the only thing that is apparent is that the hold harmless piece of it, whereas if a school district, now we're fortunate that our enrollment continues to go up. But if another school district Y, they're at 3,000 kids and they go down to 2,900 kids next year, theoretically, your foundation aid would go down. But in her numbers, the foundation aid, the hold harmless piece was pulled back, and that every school district got at least a 3% increase in foundation aid. So,
That was the same message we got at the superintendent's meeting
Yeah.
on Thursday.
so I don't know, short of that, I don't know if anything has been implemented from that report.
NISBA mentioned specifically, and it's because they didn't adjust the foundation aid formula, but they said she did put two things in the budget, was instead of using the 2000 census data, they were going to be using the census small area income poverty estimates to SAFE. That one, I know you're familiar with that.
Yeah.
At least that name.
Yeah.
And they were going to replace the free and reduced lunch program with an economically disadvantaged data instead to do that.
That's correct. And I think that will help us, quite honestly, being a CEP school district. We worked very hard this past year. Because we are CEP, we don't do the free and reduced form. We do an income verification form, and Christine helped us kind of work through that process. And we've got a number of, responses that we hadn't gotten before. But based upon where we are and our status and our demographic makeup, the economic disadvantaged numbers, I believe, will help us in the long run.
The other thing they said was overall, it won't make a whole lot of difference in the money, but it's individual districts, yes, just overall, it's
Yeah,
not a huge
could
change.
help us. It could help us. So in any event, that's kind of where we're at right now. Our basic foundation aid number, with the increase of about $2.72 million, I'm okay with that, where that number is right now. But do want to look at those TAPFU numbers and kind of go through that and make sure that we're good there. I think all of the other numbers will come in right around where we think are projecting now. So, Dr. Genestri, next slide. So state aid, moving from state aid and the help from the New York State Education Department, we look at the tax cap legislation. So the tax cap law establishes essentially a tax levy limit for each school district. The tax levy limit allows school districts to increase their property tax levy from 1 year to the next by 2% or the rate of inflation, whichever is lower. So if you see in that little red box there, the overall rate in inflation from the year previous, July 1st through June 30th, which is our fiscal year, the rate of inflation was 2.95%. So that's higher than 2%. So the annual tax cap levy limit is 2%. Now, there are exceptions that, and exemptions that will allow certain school districts to go above 2% from that limit, but you'll soon see that we are not one of those school districts. So it's 2%. Dr. Genestri, if you could hit the next slide, please. Once you have that tax levy limit, you then multiply that tax levy limit and our previous year tax levy by the allowable tax base growth factor. The tax base growth factor is a factor and a number that is set by the New York State Office of the State Comptroller. We have no say in it. It is set directly by them, and they send it to us and let us know what our tax base growth factor is. If you ask me what goes into the calculation, I don't know. I don't know, and I don't know if anybody knows. So Sweet Home for this current year, the Sweet Home number for our tax base growth factor was 1.0160. For this coming school year, the 25-26 school year, it is a flat 1, which is the lowest number allowable under the tax base growth factor legislation. So essentially what is happening is that the allowable growth of our levy remains flat. So you take our levy this year at 54,268,072, you multiply it by that growth factor of 1, and it remains the same. So essentially, the New York State Office of the State Comptroller is saying our tax levy, they're basically saying our tax levy on the growth factor is a decrease of 1.6%. So if our tax levy growth factor remained at 1.016 for this school year, if you multiplied that to the current levy of $56,268,072, our allowable tax levy for this year would have been $55,136,361. Because it's not 1.016 and it's 1, our allowable tax levy with the flat 1 growth factor remains the same, exactly as it is, $54,268,072. So comparing year to year, if it did stay at 1.016, the financial impact would have been an increase in our levy of $868,289, which is not happening this coming year. Any questions about that at all before we move on? Okay, Dr. Nastri, the next slide. So our tax levy, our tax cap, and this is kind of a closer look, for the 25-26 school year, again, using the growth factor of 1, is now 0.57%, which is an increase of $311,680. The district did not go in this current year, the district did not go to the full allowable cap, which means that there is an availability of carryover funds from the current year. So our tax cap levy, as we sit today, is an allowable 0.57%, which would be an increase of $311,680 from the current year. So we talked a little bit about this early on, but this is a closer look, the tax cap carryover funds that are available to us. For school districts that do not go over their tax cap limit in the previous year, they can increase the next year levy by the lesser of 1.5% of the previous year's limit, or the difference between what was actually levied and the tax levy limit in the previous year. So, as I made mention early on, our tax cap number in this current budgetary year was 3.9%. That translated to an allowable tax cap levy limit of $55,403,513. The board decided to go out at about 1.8%. And our tax levy for this current budgetary year is $54,268,072. The difference between those two numbers, the 55.4 and the 54.2, is $1,135,441. 1.5% of the current year levy, $54,268,072, is $814,021. So by law, the district is allowed, because we did not go to the cap this year, the district is allowed to increase our levy for the coming year, the lesser of those two numbers. $814,000 is less than $1.1 million, so we are allowed to utilize $814 million. Oh, geez, $814 million, that'd be great. That'd be great. $814,021 to add to our overall tax cap limit. If we do that, we add the $814,021 to the $311,000 that our current levy, tax cap levy limit is. It brings our total allowable tax cap levy limit to $55,393,773, which is an increase from this year of $1.125 million, or 2.1%. Any questions about that? I would strongly, based upon what you're going to see here, I would strongly recommend that A, we go to the cap, and B, we take advantage of those funds.
Why wouldn't we take advantage of it? What is the downside of not taking advantage?
You would never see that money again.
Well, I know. So why would you not use them?
Well, I mean, obviously, anytime you raise the levy, you raise taxes. And, you know, and I think going forward, I think, you know, in this current year, 24, 25, as I mentioned, our levy limit was 3.95%. We went out at 1.8%. At the time, I think it was the right decision. The year before, we went out tax neutral based upon the money that we were getting in from those funds that you mentioned before, Mrs. Jason, the COVID monies that came in. Our budget at that time, I think, increased by almost $7.5 million. So again, I supported the decision, felt it was right. Based upon where our budget is trending now, and you'll see as we get to the expense side, I would strongly recommend that we go to the cap and we utilize those funds.
I would concur with that. I mean, Mr. Feldman and I have had good discussions about where we are, and you know, I would absolutely encourage and recommend going to the cap as well.
Any questions about the tax cap before we move on?
I'll just make a comment if I could.
Sure.
I've agreed over many years that using some kind of incremental increase every year helps us avoid some big swings in the out years. But going to the public at a time where we're taking away services and asking for a tax increase, I'm going to have a hard time supporting that.
Okay.
It's just my opinion.
Okay.
Will you get to a point where you'll talk to us about reserves and
Yeah.
what they're,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Dirk, can you clarify what you mean by taking away services?
The thing we're trying to do with the bus services, you're interrupting the lives of families of 3,800 students. That's a service we provide. So
We're
you're
not
gonna
taking that away. We're restructuring. Right?
Okay, we'll continue that conversation at another time.
Okay.
That is a service we provide, so we're gonna.
We do-
change that.
But we're not changing that we provide busing for all students at this point.
Providing less bus service.
Okay, we'll table this conversation until another time. Thank you.
Sure, that's fine. So from a tax cap standpoint, another area of major revenue for us is sales tax. We receive quarterly payments from Erie County based upon sales tax revenue that the county receives. And in 23-24, you see our sales tax numbers as far as where we stood in terms of a total sales tax budgetary impact for us. It was about $5.4 million. We have received 2 quarterly payments this year, and you can see Q1 is above above the year previous, as is Q2. We'll receive our Q3 payment towards the end of March, so we'll have that information to you, excuse me, in time for the April budgetary meeting. But based upon kind of how we're trending, I have estimated sales tax receipts for the 25-26 budget at $5.6 million. So in the end, this is just a kind of a replication of the sheet that you have on your tables in front of you. This takes a look at all of the use of revenue kind of going forward. And we sit right now on the revenue side projection. We sit at $104,865,123, which is an increase of $4,454,701, translates to a 4.4% increase. And Mrs. Jason, to your point earlier, we do, and I maintain the use of reserves that we have in the current year budget. So I have, in the budget now, we have $345,000 in use of reserves. We also have an additional $300,000 in use of the debt reserve fund that we have. If you remember, that debt reserve fund was established when, several years ago, almost now 10 years ago, when the district, there was a miscalculation in aid. We established the debt service reserve to start to pay down debt. This will be the final year that we use the debt service reserve because we are exhausting the debt service reserve and we'll have paid off the miscalculation in aid. So, I am utilizing reserves in terms of aims for the overall budget. And we'll have to kind of talk about that, going forward. But it does, as I made mention, does translate to a 4.4% increase, just over $4.45 million in revenue.
Mr. Feldman, this might be coming, but where does the lunch fund come in? The governor's talked a little bit about fully funding school lunches.
So the lunch fund works in total isolation from the general fund. They're two separate funds. So unfortunately, they don't cross paths, which would be super helpful for us. But they don't cross paths. So they work in isolation of one another.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
And as we see prices rise, eggs and all those kinds of things that we're seeing, how is that affecting our numbers? I mean, obviously, we're paying more for things, but
Correct. Inflation is a real thing.
I went to buy eggs. They were like $7. I'm like,
Inflation is a real thing. Our purchasing power is not, and again, we've been battling going through that every year. And the budget since we've come out of COVID has been a challenge. It's been a challenge each and every year to kind of work through it. We've seen a tremendous increase and we'll talk about it here as we get into this, but we've seen a tremendous increase in our enrollment, B, our special education enrollment, our out-of-district special education placements, contracted transportation to be able to do and transport our kids. We've also seen, our neighborhoods, quite frankly, are changing over. You can see that by the increased enrollment. We've also seen a significant increase in enrollment in charter schools. And when the folks enroll in charter schools, the onus falls back on the district. So we'll talk a little bit about that kind of as we get into it. So before we get into the expense side, any further questions on the revenue side at all from that standpoint? Okay. So on the expense side of the budget, this is the fun stuff. We have several known budgetary impacts that are coming forward. And in the program maintenance budget, we've accounted for all of these. We'll talk a little bit about staffing as we get into this and kind of what I've done in the program maintenance budget. So from the known budgetary impacts, our Sweet Home Service Employees Association, as well as our confidentials, our clerical staff, they are going to be entering into, I think it's the final year of their contract. And that represents a 6% annual increase for those folks. And we have, just short of about 450 employees in the Service Employees Association. Our teachers, we enter year 3 of our agreement. The teachers do receive a 2% annual step increase, but our teachers also receive increment along with those steps. So those are factored in. We have in our proposal, we have bus purchases. We have an increase of $147,000 for buses to bring our total bus purchase recommendation to just north of $1 million, $1,077,000. Now, what I will say is there's a caveat there, and we're going to have to work through this as we get time to kind of ratify our budget. In that purchase, there are a total of 6 buses, 4 large electric buses that we have received funding from both the EPA as well as NYSERDA. The current administration is threatening to pull funding for those electric buses. So we may need to pivot on kind of our plan, for electrification and how many buses we might purchase. So let me just, before I start there, so it includes 4 electric buses, 1 large diesel bus, and 1 small diesel bus. The idea is that in turning over our buses, remember, we work on kind of a 12 to 13 year cycle. In order to get us to 2035, we do need to purchase some diesel buses to kind of keep the maintenance of fleet high. The electric buses, roughly a large electric bus is about $405,000 net price. We receive $200,000 from the EPA, and then we receive an additional about $78,000 from NYSERDA to help bring that cost down net to right around what we would pay for a diesel bus. If that funding goes away, we have to have some conversations about how we kind of attack our electrification plan, and B, if this changes what we look to buy. There's no word kind of where or when decisions will be made about that funding, but a $400,000 electric bus is a tough pill to swallow.
I just read something that they were talking about the infrastructure piece going away too for funding at the federal level would filter down to the state level. Have you heard anything that we're going to be affected? Well, of course we'll be affected.
We could be, I haven't, honestly, we're working through kind of our electrification plan, and we're talking with our architects and our construction team about potentially including all of this into the next capital improvement project. And one of the things that is available to us is through National Grid, it's called a Make Ready grant to help us with that infrastructure. I have not heard to this point that that's going away. I've only, in part because we've been, we're due to receive our first 3 electric buses like 3 weeks. So I've been kind of focusing on that end of it, and I'm on a statewide board now, an advocacy board for the electric buses, and the feedback that we've gotten is that that NYSERDA or EPA funding is very much on the chopping block, and $200,000 is super helpful to help us get to a point where, electric versus diesel buses are comparable. If that were to go away, that would drastically change our electrification plan, and we'd have to kind of really talk about that.
So would we have time to pivot and who knows, I guess.
Yeah, we would have time to pivot,
But those buses arriving in 3 weeks though.
Well, the 3 buses are fine.
They can
Those are
take care of.
fine. We're good there.
I mean, I guess I'm looking more at the.
Going forward, if you remember, we were awarded a grant through the EPA for $1.6 million, which is essentially 8 buses. And our plan was to do 4 this year and 4 in 26, 27, if the public supported it, obviously. So that money, that $1.6 million is the money that I'm most worried about. We're here, we've gotten our money for the 3 electric buses that are coming. We've gotten money for the chargers, that are going in over there for those 3 buses. But to that point, anything related to funding to buses going forward, relating to actual chargers going forward, very much in jeopardy,
So
very much in
But the
jeopardy.
first 3
Are good.
good, we're good.
The first 3 are good.
That and the chargers, everything we need
Yeah,
to get
and the
those
infrastructure
buses
there.
going.
Yep.
Yeah, they're over there working now. So we're
Yep.
moving forward as far as that goes.
And I just want to be clear that this is for the physical buses, not the human capital to run the buses.
Correct.
Just making
correct.
sure.
Yes,
So
sir.
This is a line item in the budget.
Yes,
correct?
sir.
So you're increasing that to help with some additional costs, either in these electric buses or new buses, and it's a replacement program.
Correct.
Just so I understand that.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And can you tell me how many buses we actually have in our fleet?
68?
68?
Is that full size or?
No, 68. Probably about 55 large ones, 12 to 13 small ones. We have two utility vehicles, Ford Explorers, things along those lines.
Okay, and I'll stay on this for a minute here.
Sure.
We've got transportation aid, of which I would, of $6,300,000
Yep.
coming, right? In your expense sheet here, I just roughly add up what I see in transportation. I don't think it adds up to $6,300,000.
So the aid that comes back in terms of transportation is based upon the money that we spent the previous year. And it's only a percentage of the overall transportation budget. It's not the full transportation budget.
So I guess what I'm asking, what is the transportation budget dollar amount?
Well, it's,
I was trying to quickly add it up here. It didn't seem like it was.
so it would be, so if you look, it would be on the second to last page.
Yeah.
There are 5510 codes. So, the budget, going forward, would be a little over $5 million. The bus garage is $177,000. Then, you talk about things like, benefits, health insurance benefits, FICA, employee retirement system, along with the bus purchases, you're probably north of about $7.5, $8 million, somewhere in there.
So we get a pretty good chunk.
We do. It's about our transportation aid is about 60%.
Very nice. Thank you.
Okay, all right. So we have some work to do on buses, depending upon kind of how things hash out from that standpoint. So we'll work to kind of finalize that, hopefully, and get a sense as to kind of where we are from that standpoint. Our debt service payment is increasing $80,000 this year. I'm going to talk about contracted transportation last. On the right-hand side, our school tuitions. We are, as I made mention early on, our special education population grows by the minute. And this is one of the areas, 1A, where we struggle to kind of keep up and budget for. It's one of the areas that we're struggling this year to kind of help in those ends of things. We are expecting a special education tuition increase for out-of-school kiddos of about $900,000 next year.
That's based on our current placements.
That's based upon our current placements, which would bring us to roughly $3 million in out-of-district placements. We've seen an incredible increase in special education out-of-district placements.
But we do our best to keep them in.
All of the kids get placed.
Yes.
All of the kids get placed. It does, and I'm not it does place a strain on the budget because, you know, again, we do our best to kind of forecast with the special education department. But when folks are moving in with high needs, you know, and quite frankly, we don't have the place in-house to add more classrooms. They do need to go out of the district.
And some of the services are
Correct. Some of
highly
the,
specialized.
some of the services
Yes.
are very highly specialized to be able to do that. We were in a meeting yesterday with the special education department, and they told me yesterday that there's a student that's moving in that needs to go to an out-of-district placement. So it happens regularly from that standpoint. So we are recommending kind of an increase of that number. Mike, you got disconnected there.
Again, there is some aid for that, correct?
100%, yes, yes.
That, again, like a percentage of,
Yep, we get high excess cost aid back. The kids are, you know, we put them through the stack process that we do get money back. You know, and generally that is in about the 57 to 58% rate back the following year.
After they reach a certain threshold.
Correct.
so this is an addition to that aid, is what you're saying here? $900? I think that's a,
Well, the aid helps, yeah. I mean, this is just from the increased side. This is an increased, from a net perspective, it's an increased cost in overall special education tuitions.
okay.
And now our kids can stay that additional year then too, if they want to. So that probably doesn't help us either.
I don't know if you want to talk to that. I think we are,
Yeah,
Not sure where we are with
we added a
that.
staff member last year
Right.
to account for that new regulation. And so once they reach their 22nd birthday, then they graduate or exit from the program.
It used to be 21, so
It
we
used to
have
be
to
21.
account for that.
Yes.
extra.
Yes, so that caused us to have a staff member that we added last year, right, Dr. One, I believe. one.
Yes, one at
Yep.
the high school,
Is it
yes.
on their birthday or is it at the end of the school
It's
year?
on their
It's on
birthday
their birthday.
It was 21 at the end
of,
of the school year,
Yeah.
I believe. Now it's 22 on their birthday.
Birthday.
Okay.
yes,
So yes,
Strange.
yes.
yes.
um,
After they turn, just so you know, after they turn 22, our aid stops.
correct.
That's why we've been graduating or exiting on their birthday, because once a day after they turn 22, all aid goes away, and that's a full expense on the district.
Correct.
So if their birthday is in January, they leave in January? So they
Yes,
can't finish out the year or anything like that. They leave in January because
Yes.
that would really be an extra.
yes, that would be full expense to the district.
Okay, so special education tuitions, we're recommending an increase of that dollar amount. Charter school tuitions, we're also recommending an increase of about $200,000 to bring us to about $1.4 million in charter school tuitions. And then we are recommending an increase in what we do with contracted one-to-one nursing for some of our special education students. We have 2 students that require a nurse around the clock. We do not have the nurses in district to be able to do that, so we do contract out. And that is at a cost of about $150,000 to the district. Our utilities across the district will likely go up about $100,000. And then we are maintaining our teacher retirement incentive line at $745,000. Remember, that is a retirement incentive for teachers that go upon their first eligibility to retire. And that would translate for us to about 10, 11 retirements, depending upon.
Past the date they have to submit?
We are past the date that they have to submit, which was January 15th.
Yes.
And then the last thing that I did want to touch on is contracted transportation. Our contracted transportation, we're recommending an increase of $500,000 in contracted transportation. We just yesterday received notification of 5 new McKinney-Vento students that we need to transport with. So I'm going to start with McKinney-Vento students. This number, honestly, quite frankly, should be higher in terms of an increase.
Could you just explain what that is for maybe people watching, what the McKinney-Vento?
McKinney-Vento is a student that is classified as homeless. And based upon where they live and are placed by an agency, or if they move in a temporary housing situation, their home district is required to transport them to and from school every day. So that number, quite frankly, should be higher.
In a 50-mile radius,
50 miles.
which is
I'm sorry, thank you.
big radius.
That is a big radius. So that number, quite frankly, should be higher. We have in our budget this year, $2.6 million in contracted transportation. We're likely going to hit in expenses of about $4 million. There's a couple of factors in play here. Number one, the county, we've been made aware of the county and the Department of Social Services that they can help us kind of defray some of the costs that we experience related to McKinney-Vento kids. There's been varying degrees of success, but we are submitting a pretty hefty spreadsheet to the Department of Social Services this week. Ms. Nowak, our homeless liaison, needs to certify that, and once that's done, we'll submit it and see. I'm submitting our McKinney-Vento costs from the start of school through the end of January, and then I'll do another one if we're approved to do it for the remainder of the school year.
Those funds are there to
We're
support that.
told, I just don't know.
Social services, I just
I
want.
just don't, I'll say this, that Dr. Genesti heard about it at one of his superintendent meetings. There's a school district that has done it. I reached out to my counterpart at that school district. They sent me their spreadsheet. I did the spreadsheet, sent it to social services, and they said, oh, we're revamping our spreadsheet. So they sent the spreadsheet back, but it took, I don't know, a month or so to hear an answer. So I'm hopeful that there'll be some cost savings there from that standpoint. I'm just not certain of it. And I don't want to put a dollar number to it until I hear back.
This is new for us, so until the check is in hand, we'll stay hopeful. I think that's a good word.
Yes, it's a good way to stay hopeful.
I don't
Yes,
blame you for that, but you're talking some part of that $4 million, is that? what
correct.
you're Talking about?
Yes, that's what I'm exactly talking
And
about.
that $4 million is outside this other transportation costs, or is that?
Correct. That is correct. The
In addition-
transportation costs that you looked at that we talked about before is in-house transportation. There's a separate line item in the budget just for contracted transportation. So further on that piece, if the model for transportation that is start and stop times is presented, goes through, my intent is to kind of take a look, and we'll go to work right away to be able, I think that we can do more with less drivers, that we can start to kind of pull back some of that contracted transportation and do it in-house. Secondly, what I'd like to be able to do is take a look at, okay, these are our in-house runs. Right now, we have a bid, a contracted transportation bid that has 41 different out-of-district runs that a contracted transportation company does for us. And then there's the McKinney-Vento piece. So I want to take a look at, we would route based upon the new start and stop times. We take a look at our human capital and say, we have this many drivers, we can get it done. And then I would use the remaining drivers to kind of attack the contracted transportation and some of the McKinney-Vento pieces. And thirdly, I'm gonna go probably back out to bid based upon what we know, and see if we can get a better pricing structure from that standpoint.
Do we partner with like I mean, I'm sure Amherst, Williamsville, we're all kind of sending kids places. Do we piggyback with them? Is
We've piggybacked off like our McKinney-Vento contract that we have with our bus company. We piggybacked off of a Kenton School District contract to get a better rate for us, to help us kind of defray some of those costs. In an instance where we are, pushed for a driver or, for a sports run, I'll call my counterparts at other district, hey, can you do this? Can you pick up these kids? So it doesn't happen and maybe as often as you think, but it does happen pretty routinely.
like all the kids going to St. Joe's? Can we, I mean, I'm sure Amherst and Williamsville have kids going to St. Joe's. Is there a way that we all can send those kids to St. Joe's? or-
So we've centralized our operations for the private and parochial schools. You use St. Joe's. So we've required folks that want transportation to go to St. Joe's, rather than us coming to their houses, they come here and they get on the bus here and then they go out. It saves us time, money, things along those lines.
And do we say ever to families, look, we will pay you a stipend if you agree to transport your kid somewhere? Can we do that?
We can do that, particularly with, if folks, we've kind of adopted that mentality with, modality with, our McKinney-Vento kids, such that if mom and dad have, or whoever has transportation, we've offered to pay them, to transport their students to and from school. And they're reimbursed the IRS mileage rate.
Can I ask a question about who falls under contracted transportation? Is that our special education students that are being transported out of district to agency schools? Does that fall under there?
Some. So there are some special education students that, for out of district placements, that are on those runs. Any charter school, any other, short of local high schools, Canisius, St. Joe's, Narden, those types of folks, we do those. But any other private or parochial school, contracted transportation does. Contracted transportation does a portion of our McKinney-Vento runs. So there are, as I mentioned earlier, there are 41 different runs that are on our current contracted transportation bid, and that we've submitted to the New York State Education Department.
So that 41 is then McKinney-Vento, charter, private, parochial, and special education students. Like, I think I'm just not understanding, what does contracted transportation mean? Like,
Yep.
what kids are those?
So that you hit it.
Everybody.
You
Okay,
hit it.
cool. Thank
You
you.
hit it. So in the end, the number is $500,000, and that's dependent upon many of the things that I just talked about. So that number, along with the number of special education, the charter school increase for us, those are costs in the current year budget that, for the last number of years that we've had a difficulty kind of pinpointing and bullseyeing, and we've struggled to kind of work through the budgetary process. I'm just going to be perfectly honest with you. I don't know if we could have forecasted those three things probably hit to our budget this year north of an increase of about $2.5 million.
Charter kids do we have going elsewhere? How many? I know, I'm asking.
I don't,
for numbers.
I don't know off the top of them. I could get that for you certainly.
Just to
I
see
don't
what the
know.
increase is from last year versus this year.
We could find that out for you, sure. Sure. Yes, Mr. Ravenel.
So the bids that you send to the state for pricing, right? Is that, or
No, so we put out a competitive bid for bus contracting companies to respond to. They respond to those bids, and based upon the lowest responsible bidder, we award those. And then, once those are awarded, those go on a contract to state education such that we get the aid back on them.
But the bids go out generally to the contracted bus companies. They don't go to the state, correct?
No, they don't. A competitive bid always goes to the vendors, so it goes out to the vendors. Once those come in, we do an opening, we make a recommendation to the board to approve it. Once it's approved, that bid and the results of those bids goes on a transportation contract that we submit to state ed so that we get our aid back on it.
DA.
Yep.
It has, and I made this call already, so don't hold it against me, but does can BOCES help in any of this, the cooperative educational services?
Yeah, it's funny. That's a great question. We've sat through Dr. Genestri, Dr. Wilson, Dr. Shaibi, myself. Earlier this year, we went through kind of a regionalization survey where we looked at kind of all of the services that we provide. We submitted kind of our answers and how our day-to-day operations work here in district. And then BOCES has done kind of a compilation of all that stuff to be able to look at the potential opportunities to share services across the district. So I think it's very in its infancy stages. I don't know, again, based upon the difference in geographic difference, the difference in start and stop times, I don't know how it might work in a busing situation, but we're going to talk about it. We're talking because every district across Western New York is experiencing the driver shortage and the ability to get kids to and from school. So it's being looked at.
Yeah.
But that conversation's not going to help us for next year as we're, okay.
There's another meeting at the end of February to talk regionalization. I think transportation is one of the hot topics because most of us are in a crisis when it comes to the driver shortage. So we are exploring ideas. And I know I sent the board the data snapshot of commute times this week. That's some of the information that we've been gathering and some of the data that they've been putting together for us. So BOCES is helping out in that regard. It's trying to compile the data so we can see if there's some solutions out there that we could piggyback off of.
I'm sorry.
As on the 500,000, just so I understand let's just say next year, there's another 500,000 in the following year budget. Part of that every year, though, a portion of that, and it sounded like it was about 60%, then the state comes back. So even though I just think it's important to recognize that even though, saying it's a $500,000 increase, there's also a 300,000 on the revenue side at some
The
portion.
following year.
Yes,
The
so
following
there's a
year.
disconnect.
So there is an expense, right? And I would wholeheartedly agree with you that, obviously, the more we spend related to transportation in general, the more aid that's going to come back. But again, from the revenue side, stand of the house, as, those expenses continue to go up, we have to be mindful of, while there's aid coming in, there's still that delta, that $200,000 delta that we have to kind of look at. And if our tax cap doesn't continue to kind of do what we might hope it would do, then we have to have different conversations. Yes, sir. I'm sorry.
Did we already, is that bid, for those extra contracted, like, is that number concrete, or is that's a?
So there is an existing contract. We're able to, that's a good question. We're able to extend that contract. State Ed puts out a number, it's based upon CPI that allows us to extend a contract at a certain percentage, whatever that might be. So we generally get that CPI information late March, early April to be able to see. But we've been operating under this current contract. I think this is our maybe fourth year. Coming up will be our fourth year. And I think that there's an opportunity to see what else is out there, to be honest.
Okay. But it's not a situation where we're going to be short, or I understand there's.
No, it's just an opportunity to kind of look at things maybe a little differently based upon how things hash out with our start and stop times, what we have available in terms of human capital and buses to be able to, kind of take some away from that contracted transportation line and help the overall budget. So based upon, how things, again, like I say, might hash out, we might look at doing our contracted runs a little differently.
But we're at the mercy in essence of the
The bid.
private market.
And the bid.
For that,
Mhm.
yeah, that portion. And going forward, it'd be the same thing.
What I would also say is we can bid anytime that we like. We don't have to award a bid. So if a bid comes in and it's exorbitantly higher than what we currently are, we can maintain our current contract. Yes, Mr. Ravenel.
The current plus some kind of
CPI
COLA.
increase. Yep.
Okay. So what are your thoughts on the market for bus drivers? Do you think this is a permanent situation? You see something that may change over the next? couple of years?
It's a good question.
Go ahead.
I think that we'll have to, when this current contract, we were kind of top of the heap in terms of pay rate for bus drivers. We're probably middle of the road now. What I think is most challenging, the rate of pay is certainly something that people consider. I would also say that our overall demographic of bus drivers is kind of a higher age. And Scott and Dr. Shaibi have done Scott Kennedy and Dr. Shaibi have done a great job bringing in new bus drivers. But for every 2 we bring in, 3 retire. So it's hard from that standpoint. If I had an answer, I'd have 80 bus drivers over there. I don't know.
No, I'm not talking about today. Is there a trend that maybe needs to be studied? So if we can go another year, there may be some additional retirees that want to drive, something like that. I'm
Yeah,
just, again,
yeah.
speaking out loud here.
We are turning over every rock we can. That's all I can say from that standpoint.
Okay, and if I can, the current rate they're paying hourly, is it an hourly rate we're paying?
Yeah, $22.54 starting salary.
So on a full-time basis, that's close to what, $45,000-$50,000, something
Yeah,
like that?
somewhere in there.
Plus
And what is the
benefits, right?
starting rate for a mechanic? What's a mechanic in our garage get paid?
Dr. Shaibi, do you know that off the top of your head? It's $23, $24.
Pretty close,
Yeah.
right? How about aides and assistants or whatever?
Bus aids, $16.24.
And aides in the schools itself?
Same,
Your aides?
same.
In about the 16
Same.
range. So they can
Same.
get a raise if they drive a bus?
They could. Many bus drivers start as bus aides because there is a process that
Right.
they have to go through to get their license. But
Which we also train,
Which
we
everybody
provide
gets.
training.
we
for.
provide, we provide training. They're eligible to, get health insurance and things along those lines.
It's not a
So
bad deal,
It's
really.
not. It's
Especially for
just,
someone that
I
maybe-
don't know what it is, but we're certainly trying. So
Okay, so my final question, I guess, on
Yep.
this note is, you got 41 runs, right?
Yeah.
Contracted runs. Will that stay the same next year?
Again, it depends. It depends. Like, I think that if the busing that is proposed and the start and stop times go through, we won't need as many of our drivers on the road. And I think we can take back some of those runs.
Okay, I honestly, if we kept everything the same, you're saying roughly about the same
Yes,
41
sir.
runs?
Yes, sir.
And roughly some addition, about the same cost to the district plus
The increment, yes.
increment?
Yes.
But I think it's important to note that
Let me finish, Dr.
Yep.
Genesi. I think it's worth it to avoid the disruption, that's again, my opinion here, is to continue on with those runs until we can find we can better predict when maybe the market for bus drivers will change and not disrupt families of the 3,800 students. That's my opinion. Go ahead.
Okay.
No, I was just going to say, we have no idea. We had 2 retirements of bus drivers this week. We expect more to happen. I don't necessarily think there is a trend out there, However, it's been trending downward as far as enrollment of bus drivers goes. And recruitment is slow in respect to who's actually signing on to come and stay with us. So it's just hard to predict. And part of the proposal, quite frankly, for next year was to address this issue. And it's been 3 years, I mean, it's been 3.5 years for me here at the district, but seeing our driver rates our enrollment of drivers stay steady or slow declines. So I don't know how long we can wait.
The runs that you mentioned, you had said we may be able to pull them back because of the proposal on start and stop time. I guess my question is if there is such, and maybe this relates to what Dirk was asking, if there is, that's not in here. That's not an expectation, at least in the budget
No.
right now. Okay.
No.
So we could keep, like, if we needed that buffer, we could like that, and I understand it's really not a buffer. I guess you're saying it's a possibility that we may not need as much contracted drivers
Exactly.
but we have the ability to, right now, at least based on the budgeting, that, and then assuming the contract is there.
But what I
it
would say is that if we maintain kind of where we are and we didn't address contracted transportation and we remained where we are, that increase of $500,000 is probably closer to an increase of $1 million.
Okay. And in all fairness, because I do know I've spoken out in regarding the proposed start time. I was at the finance committee for Erie County and Association of School Boards, and I asked, how are they doing on, and it was pretty much across every district that bus drivers was a challenge. And I think one district mentioned they actually closed the schools. They had to use a snow day, one of their snow days because they hadn't had enough drivers.
So yesterday, I'm just, I don't want to get too far in the weeds, but we had 4 of our 5 mechanics driving in the afternoon, our director of transportation, and we delayed dismissal time for some of our private and parochial runs in district because of call-offs, sickness, et cetera.
So talk to me about contracted drivers, contracted bus company drivers. Are they on call? I mean, do you say, look?
No, they're not on call. They're
Set that ahead of time?
Say again?
You have to set that ahead of the
Yes.
season, ahead of the school year?
Based upon the bid, yes. They can help us in a matter of a pinch, but not day of. Like if we were short on bus drivers, I can't call up and send me 3 bus drivers over because there's insurance liability, a whole mess of things.
So how far in advance do you need to do that?
Generally, if I give them a week and say, hey, we're really struggling getting a bus to go to Pioneer for a cheerleading competition, we could get one, but at a cost.
So if we are looking out and we're saying we've got maybe a few mechanics driving every week, or that happens, because I've heard that, we've discussed that. Is the cost the reason why we wouldn't just go out to bid and say, we probably need an extra 5 drivers every week or a certain number of drivers so that we don't have to dip into our mechanics? Is that something?
Well, it'd be great if I could do that, but I can't predict when somebody's going to be sick or.
No, I'm just saying like
Ahead of time.
a bid, like we're bidding now.
Your bid, instead of 41 runs, bid it for 50 runs.
No, because it's based upon where you're going. I can't predict. So like there's a run in there that says I'm going from, I'm picking up Mary and Jason on 123 Anywhere Street, and I'm taking her to Mount St. Mary Academy on Delaware Road. I can't just say and build a generic run that says we're going to and from this place on the happenstance. I mean, unless.
When you submit a bid, to the private companies.
Mhm.
What are you asking for? Just a
I'm
rate-
asking
a rate
for, I'm saying we are going to transport for the 25-26 school year. We are transporting one student from this address to this school. We are transporting two students from this address to this school. Very, very specific.
Okay.
Okay?
So in the case of the mechanics, can you add those mechanics runs onto the bid? I guess that's what you're asking.
No,
right?
I can't because I don't know where they're going. It changes every day.
They don't have dedicated, the mechanics aren't dedicated, they're
like
in a pinch.
substitutes.
Yeah. When we have no one else.
But we have drivers like on a traditional, like drivers bids for bids. They put in their bid for a run.
Yes,
That's constant, right?
yes.
So that could be that run, like, that's what I was wondering is like, oh, could
So
we?
are
add-
you asking that if we could contract some of our normal runs just so we had
So we don't have
extra
to,
drivers?
yeah, so we don't have to have the mechanics drive, you know. because-
Every run that we have in district is part of the driver bids. Our drivers bid on all of our in-district runs. So all of our in-district runs are covered. What happens is if I'm a bus driver and I transport kids to and from Willow Ridge, let's say, and I call in sick. And if we don't have a substitute driver available to us, then we have to go to either a mechanic or to one of the two head bus drivers or Scott Kennedy.
Okay.
Okay?
Mr. Feldman,
Yes.
approximately, if we were, the cost of a contracted run versus in-house,
Oh,
double?
again, it depends. The results of the bid on the contracted runs go from anywhere from roughly $280 a day,
A run,
a run.
not a day.
Well,
But,
Yeah.
if we did multiple runs
Yeah.
in the day, it'd be 280.
yes, $280 runs a day, all the way upwards of $750.
Yep.
So if they do 3 runs a day or 2 runs a day or whatever, then it's that much money times whatever. how many
That's
days.
correct.
Money.
And as you speak, this is maybe just a comment. I like the fact that because we don't contract generally, we have in-house control for all this.
Correct.
And the other thing I'd like to say, if, for people watching out of there, again, it's not for lack of trying. I mean, I've been to job fairs that we've had. They're doing just everything they can short of offering blood to the people that come and,
Yeah.
and work. So I just want to
Oh.
point out that we appreciate the effort that goes into trying to help this problem.
All right. I'm going to try and get us back on the rails here. So from that standpoint, those are the known budgetary impacts. We do have a handful of unknown budgetary impacts. We're going to talk a little bit about teacher retirements. We do have 10 teacher retirements and how that might impact staffing kind of going forward. Our administrators and supervisors right now, they're in the final year of their contract. Their contract expires in June. There are 22 or 23 members in that negotiation group, that service group. So we're working through that, and their impact on the budget next year is unknown at this point in time. And then perhaps probably the biggest one for us is the New York 44 Health Trust. So that increase is, I ask my counterpart at Erie One BOCES every time I see him, and every time I walk by him, he goes, I don't know yet. So it gets a little frustrating because we generally don't get that increase until late March.
It was late last year, real late last year. I
It
thought
was
more
very
like
late
April.
last year.
Yeah.
So we generally don't get that until late March. So last year's increase in the New York 44 Trust overall plans was close to 7.5% for us. Right now, in the program maintenance budget that you have before you, I'm estimating about a 4% increase in that. And that translates to about $453,000. Our overall increase is dependent upon what we do in terms of staffing. I'm sorry. I backed out the 10 retirees. I've backed out about $220,000 in terms of health insurance premiums for those 10 retirees. So if those retirees, depending upon what we do with staffing, the folks coming in on the backside would obviously increase that. So hopefully, by March-ish, we'll have an answer kind of going forward. If that number is higher than 7.5%, which is what it was last year, it's going to be a hard one. It's going to be hard for us to swallow. And then the last thing is the BOCES budget. Our BOCES participation, as I mentioned, is on Thursday. So we'll look to kind of work through that piece. Next slide.
Mr. Feldman,
Yes.
I'm wondering if this would be a good time to take a break, maybe 5-10 minutes.
Sure.
Be all right. So maybe 9:40, come back, 7 minutes, cut it in between.
1:45.
9:45,
There
okay,
you go.
all right,
Thank you.
we'll take a break.
Just a reminder, we're still on camera. I can't shut the camera off. So
Okay.
if we're having conversations,
Exit the room.
probably not the best place to
Yeah,
do it here.
Still an open session.
Thank you.
Oh, you did.
Not all of it, like I'm not.
Okay.
Got 100 things to do and that's not on the top of my list, but,
You know, I'm not shy. but I-
no, I know. So, yeah.
Complex or even count, so.
I
don't worry
know,
about it.
math has never been my thing, but,
What?
this is different.
Will go.
I figured.
Very successful.
Good. Got in the car, I went to the middle school and I was telling Dr. Wilson. Car, last night after middle school, I didn't intend to stop by, and I got halfway down the 299. But is it good?
Yes, yes, we did very well. Over 300.
That's incredible.
Because we're still on camera. I'm not gonna give numbers.
I got you. I got you.
But yes, no, it was our
Bags.
best one.
All
So you
had to
stood
be-
by
out.
far.
It's very nice.
I mean, we probably doubled what we did last year. So that's very.
Mother,
And we were
Mother?
we were packed.
yeah, she's texting
It
me.
was tough to move in there.
Uh,
It's too valuable to do that.
Okay.
Sorry. Working together for 3.5
There you
years.
go. Start to read each other's
That's
minds.
right, that's right.
my teenager just texted me and said, where are you? And I said, I'm at a board meeting. And he said, that's fun. I bet you're having a whimsical and salubrious time.
What was the second
So
one?
thank you.
Salubrious?
Salubrious.
Salubrious. Oh,
So
He's not
thank
old
you.
enough to remember Tom
Thank you
Jones.
to 11th grade ELA teachers at the high school for that.
Were you here when
That's fun.
Tom Jones used to be on TV or were you?
Oh, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so you remember hearing him
Commander
say that?
Tom,
Yeah,
yep.
yes, exactly.
He doesn't know that though. He's
No, that's
only
what I said.
17.
Don't worry, he's old enough for
As a
that.
kid. Oh,
Yeah.
my
That
goodness.
was how we
Commander
described
Tom.
the best weather days though.
Salubrious.
I grew
It's a
up
great word.
I'm part of that group at the Earthwise side of Rickey's, still live just up the street from me.
Yeah.
So I'm still friends with this kid. So
Oh,
it's just,
wow.
yeah. But I tell you what, from seeing him on TV versus in the neighborhood is just another dad. Yeah, he didn't pay any, and nothing like being on TV, except that voice. When he stepped out to talk to somebody, you could hear his voice way down the street.
We,
It's just the way he always was.
so yesterday we had our very luncheon, annual luncheon. Had public serve from ICE yesterday, which was pretty fascinating. His message was very. What I thought and this morning, but that's.
Always
neither here nor
going to
there.
be different.
But
Yeah.
he said he was Irv Weinstein's boss at Channel 7.
Really?
I'm like, he goes, not really. He was, he never thought of me as that way, but,
Yeah.
and we.
Imagine how Weinstein having a ball.
Like, oh, no,
Yeah.
silly.
That's what he said. It was kind of a funny
It's
line.
just it.
Yeah.
when I was
Oh,
a kid on
absolutely.
TV.
Yeah. All those
Yeah.
years, he really was, yeah.
He was-
I love watching like this. Like Blizzard 70.
Right.
Yes.
Yes.
So they have all the news coverage.
Yes.
And I'm a Blizzard baby. Morning of, and she said, I just want to be.
But thank you very much.
Yeah, there
But
you
like,
go.
we were running
TMI.
all of these old
Yeah.
news stories
Yeah.
and they were on there. And it was just like a blast.
Funny. When I graduated high school, I remember it all very well.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
Probably one of the best.
It's just weird.
Hard to believe.
No competition.
So far this year. No. Okay.
So. For need, so our circumstances. But it was interesting. On top of whatever.
That's awesome. Wow, that's incredible.
Carol's fitness.
Good for him.
And he's like, home and
Yep.
like take a shower so that I can work behind him. Like, you get it?
There's.
That would make you nervous.
Which one?
Yeah.
I heard the way the other.
No problem.
You guys know who he is?
I might, you know what time I had to be at high school then? don't know.
I remember it was 7 because I got out at 1.
That's
That's great. But we did that when I student taught at Maryvale. 7:05 was our start time. And I got there in the morning when it was dark and I left in the afternoon when it was dark.
Now I will say this. And now I played football. But the gobs of homework. Which I think is different nowadays. I can't imagine.
Doesn't do that.
I just remember doing 2 hours of math.
Yeah.
Every single
They
thing.
might
And losing
resist.
my mind.
Did you have the math books that were like skinny?
Yeah.
And they were real thick. So I threw the blue geometry one on my bedroom wall one day because I was so, like, I couldn't figure it out.
Yeah.
And there's like at my former stepdad's house, there was still a dent in the wall with that.
Oh, the memories.
The memories. He's like, I just couldn't bring myself to like plaster over it. Like, he's like, I remember that day you were losing it. You just couldn't figure something out and you were like, like, I haven't thrown anything like that since then, but
Yeah.
oh.
And the cops like we had somebody. Yeah, that's all I could think of, like, I'm like, oh, this is the superintendent, the rest of it. That'd be great. Actually, it's funny because we were at the same point. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Like towards the end. Give me the right eye.
That's fun. Morning, and he's like, where are you?
Oh.
Where did you go this early on a Saturday morning?
See, my kids are usually up before I am.
My youngest
The
was.
younger ones.
Yeah, my youngest is up before the sun comes up.
How's the
Sometimes it's 4 a.m., sometimes
I'm
it's 6
cold
a.m.
again.
But the
I'm
teenager,
not.
he's. Color cup you got today?
Usually, but
Okay, this was a Christmas, like the white elephant.
Oh,
Got
yeah.
this. I like it.
It was a really,
Like.
really cute
Mhm.
scenario. Did you get to play last night or are you going today?
no, you know what? You know Bobby Cook? He does our choreography for
Okay.
our show. He does it for Will South and they did Music Man, so I went over there
Oh,
for Music Man. And then West Seneca's tonight because I've got a kid who is in West Seneca. So, you know, you try, and I'm on college, so I can't go to anything else.
I'm gonna hit the.
Well, somebody was saying there's no tickets for
Yeah,
today.
I got my ticket ordered. I'm
That's
glad.
good.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
I love to see the little
heard it was really
kids
good.
dressed up in their frozen outfits. I think that's so cute.
They were saying, people are saying it's really good, so.
Oh,
That was really fun. I wonder, Brian, is your daughter in the musical?
She does the, she's in crew.
yeah, behind the scenes.
Ah.
She's doing all the mics and the
Important role.
It is,
Yeah.
absolutely.
volume and all
So
that.
this is for her. Did you get to see it
Makes
last
me
night
feel
or
better.
I'm going today.
Yeah, me too. I'll see you over there.
is it? Oh,
And my,
Is there an afternoon show or just
I
tonight?
told her to
At
2:00 today.
2:00.
Yeah.
No
volume.
evening.
like us old folks. in the
Marianne, I
back
had
that
Bryce
can't
with me
hear so
last
well.
night. He would have enjoyed your company.
Do you know Bobby Cook?
Abby.
Bobby Cook, he does our choreography
Bobby
for
had
our
this
show.
little-
He also does Will South.
What's
So
that?
I
Yeah.
went over to see him in Will
Was it
South.
good?
Oh.
Oh, we're in Kennewick.
Yes, it was great.
Awesome.
The kids had fun. The kids had fun.
Oh.
You know, Danielle, I almost walked over to get it too, but I'm just like, that's too far of a walk.
You know what I
I'll
was
get it
impressed about?
after.
First, the number of kids involved, like, was
Oh, they include
super
everybody.
impressive.
Good.
I think over 100 between stage crew and
Oh,
cast,
good.
but the costume.
And I told her I love to see the little kids dressed up as frozen princesses and things when they come in. It's a great show. 'cause
I can't get that song out of my head.
I know, let it go, Don, let it
No,
go.
no. Do you want to build a
Oh, do you want to build a
snowman?
snowman? Yes, yes.
Yeah.
It was my first experience with Frozen. I've never seen.
Oh,
the
it's so, oh,
movie
you've
and-
never seen
You've
it?
never seen Frozen?
Seriously?
Hey, doesn't have girls, that's right.
It's a girly movie.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've never seen it.
Do you want to build a snowman?
It's in his head.
I will give it to you. You do have sons.
I think I might pass it on to them, whoever else. Don't want to build it anymore.
Yeah, it's paying the market rate for a lobster in a restaurant. You don't know what it's gonna be ahead of time. It's like when you
Oh.
get.
We're not.
then you
No,
know.
we're missing
But like I
it.
know first, so like take Matt. And
Right there.
goes out there, get a view. So I'm like.
Oh, yeah.
His dad takes him
Andy Finley's birthday.
for him.
Oh, Andy.
Yeah.
What is she
First
doing
Christmas
now?
with Dre.
What is she
From
doing?
school,
Where is she?
Let me see if I can see it here.
30.
Yeah.
Mine.
Was she lawyer or pre-med or she was all over the board?
Um,
And then she did something with
I
language.
know that they combine.
She-
There's a
first off,
child
she
that
is a
lives
he.
around the corner from us.
Okay.
She lives in
They would be on
Pittsfield,
the same bus, so
Massachusetts, he
for two
lives
kids,
in Pittsfield, Massachusetts now.
which is not super
Rachel's
efficient.
not the
It
healthiest.
says she's a dialogue facility. I keeps, because I'm so long
I
you used
know,
to say
we've
it that way. I
known
know.
Andy. for
Let him
so
have his
long.
green cheese. What are you
Dialogue
doing?
facility over at Williams College.
everything bagel. Are you kidding me?
What is
I think
it?
we're ready.
I don't even know.
Is that like a
I'll show you a message.
translator?
We ready to go, Dr.
Good question.
Genestri?
We are ready. Let's keep going.
All right, Dr. Genestri, if you could hit the next slide.
Every once in a while something pops up.
So as we kind of work through the expense piece of the budget, as I made mention earlier, we did have 10 retirees. You can see the list of retirees that are there on the screen for you. What I've done in this budget is I've backed out their salaries and benefits. So in 24-25, a teacher on top step, plus a $2,750 longevity stipend. Their salary is $114,446 plus benefits. So I've backed those salaries along with their benefits out of the budget. For 25-26, a teacher that is hired on step one of the master's schedule is $51,078 plus benefits. That's a net of a little over $63,000. So as I made mention, again, I did back out those salaries along with those benefits out of the budget. And we have to have a discussion further about staffing.
So if you remember last year, I think it was at the March or April meeting, we did a kind of detailed presentation to the board on staffing in relation to where we are with enrollment, in relation where we are with special ed, and a couple of other things. We're building that now through our conversations with principals and directors and working with Dr. Shaibi to put that presentation together for the board, either March or April, hopefully March, to see buildings are settling right now as well as far as transfer requests go. So while you see 10 positions on the screen right now, it might not necessarily be one for one here. We're looking at needs and assessing needs to make sure we're properly staffed in all areas. So like I said, we're building that now and we'll have more details at the March or April meeting.
Is this just first eligible or is this,
These are all the retirees.
so we could get more?
We could get more.
Yeah.
We could get more. That's true.
June 30th could be
Is
a
the
day.
yeah.
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 They have to give us 30 days notice. Anybody who's past first eligible. And then there's another deadline in the contract they have to meet too, but yeah,
Your youngest.
basically 30 days.
Your youngest.
Next slide, Dr. Genestri. So this is kind of just a snapshot as to where we are right now. So as I made mention earlier this morning, on the revenue side, we are projecting at $104,865,123, which is an increase of 4.4%. What is presently in the budget right now from an expenditure side, we are at $729,512, an increase on the expense side of 4.3%. We are at a surplus as we sit at $135,000. So we're in decent shape. We're not in great shape by any stretch of the imagination as we work through the budgetary process. So it's going to depend largely on staffing and largely on what comes in terms of health insurance. Those are our two real big nuggets that we'll have to work through. So Dr. Genestri, the next slide. One of the other things that I did want to bring to your attention to, as I made mention earlier as well, we do receive a significant amount of funding that is in title or in federal grants. These federal grants, as you are all well aware, has been kind of at the forefront as part of either a freeze that's been removed and then certainly discussion kind of going forward. So these are a list of all the grants that we received. Title I, IDA Part B 611 grant, IDEA Part B 619 grant. Those are two grants related to special ed. Title II, Title III Immigrant and ELL, Title IV, and the two universal pre-K grants, the one original grant and then the expansion grant due to our overall increased enrollment. So if you, yes, Dirk.
So I brought those numbers, by the way, to Washington with me and delivered them in summary to Tim Kennedy's office. So they're not at risk this year. Am I right in saying that?
This present year, correct, yes.
So next year is where we have some issues.
Correct.
Oh, okay, thanks.
So we have, for those grants, the 24-25 total allocation for those grants that are in the budget, not in the budget, but that the district receives right now is $3.558 million. Of that total allocation, you can see in the second column, we have over $2.15 million in salary for teachers that are in the district. Those salaries are, some of them are in whole. A teacher's salary might be fully in Title I. It might share between Title I and the general fund. But I wanted to give you a snapshot here that there are 35 staff members that we have tied in salaries in federal funds in some capacity. Some of those, again, some of those salaries might be split between a federal funding line as well as the general fund line. But if those federal funds in any way are in jeopardy going forward, that number, that $2.156 million number is number that's tied directly to people and that will need to be, found a way to get back into the general fund at some point in time.
When do we get our pre-K numbers that we can guesstimate for next year? When do you think? we'll
Dr.
have-
Wilson, you want to talk
We're in the
about that?
process, in the next couple of months, we will be doing enrollment, and so we'll get updates along the way, yeah.
Can I assume that the majority of these programs here are things that we have to do?
I'm sorry?
Can I assume that the majority of these staff members of the programs are things we have to do? They're not things that we-
That's a fair assessment. Yeah, there's in Title I, there's a number of reading specialists, things like that are tied into that salary. Obviously, in the special ed grants, we have a bunch of consultant teachers that are tied into that salary. Title III is some of our ELL teachers, and the Universal Pre-K and Pre-K Expansion Program it's really all salaries. So, yes, in short, yes. There are a number of other things that are in the grants. Obviously, you see that there's a delta there of about $1.4 million that are supplies related to the day-to-day operations of our buildings, supplies, et cetera. Again, that would likely have to be come through the general fund, and we'd have to take a long, hard look at those items.
How many how many Ls do we have? Just a rough number.
I can get you them.
Okay.
Okay, next slide, Dr. Janelle. So this is the obligatory tax rate slide. Just as a friendly reminder, we are using assessment levels for this year because obviously assessment levels have not been set for the 25-26 school year. We kept the Amherst equalization rate. If you remember, they went to full value last year, so we've kept it at 100%. We've kept the Tonawanda equalization rate at 23%, which is where it was this current budgetary year. And I've used the tax cap levy limit that we shared with you earlier of $55,393,773, such that in an average house assessed at $150,000 across the district in both the town of Tonawanda and Amherst, our tax community would see a tax bill increase of approximately $30 from the present year.
Let me just ask a question because it might be in a further slide, but we talked last year about instead of doing 150,000 a house, because most of the houses are way up for there, you were going to use a different amount.
Sure, we can.
Can we look at that?
Sure.
Because I don't know how realistic that 150 is at this point. That's kind of the one we've been using for
Sure,
a
we
long
can,
time.
I can get that information from the town assessor's office, so we can work to get a more representative number.
What we've got. Okay,
Sure,
thank you.
that's fine. Next slide, Dr. Janestri. So in short, that is a program maintenance budget from where we are. As you can see and hear, we have a lot of work left to do to kind of get to a point where we would present to you a budget for your consideration and vote on April 22nd. So I've kind of bulleted a number of points here. We have to determine, where the board sits kind of from the standpoint of the tax cap and or the use of reserves. Again, remember our tax cap was at 0.57%, but I did make a recommendation to use the $814,000 in carryover funds. We do not need to use that, but that does have a significant impact on the budget if we don't. So we have to make a determination as to kind of where we want to go from there. We will work through all of the retirements and, as Dr. Janestri said, present to you a staffing plan in March. And then if there are any additional staffing needs also at that point in time in March, we'll continue to monitor updates on state aid. And again, I made mention of the TAFPU number. It's a tricky word to say, but we'll continue to monitor that. And then we'll monitor sales tax projections. We'll work through the bus purchases and kind of get a sense as to what we believe may or may not happen in terms of federal funding with the electric buses. And then we'll go through the budget line by line again, based upon kind of where our staffing plan hashes out to get to a budget that is maintains the programs and is fiscally responsible. And we'll work to do that. And our next update back to you all and the members of the Board of Education and certainly our school community would be on March 11th at our study session. So with that, any questions? Yes.
Reading this right, I'm going back a handful of slides. For the teachers that are retiring, the budget doesn't include any of their replacements yet at this point,
That's
right?
correct.
So if we decide we have to replace all 10 of them, which I think is a reasonable assessment, we're looking at 51,000
630,000.
benefits, and then on top of that,
Yep,
30-40% more for
Yep.
benefits.
that's correct.
So 75,000-80,000 a purse.
Yeah, we usually use about $70,000 as a marker from that
Okay, so we're
standpoint.
looking at
Because
fif-
generally, for the most part, and I don't want to generalize or characterize, but younger teacher, probably not attached to a family plan in terms of health insurance. So we kind of go middle of the road as far as that goes, but generally about $70,000.
Okay, so we're looking at the potential of 60, 70,000, maybe a little more,
Correct.
700,000 more in
Correct.
additional.
So, yep, and that hinges a lot on, again, on, you know, those decisions will hinge on perhaps health insurance and some other things going forward, but yeah, like, could we make that work? Probably, in a budget, but it would take a lot of work to do so. We'd have to kind of come back with you about recommendations about, areas that would be impacted. I don't know. Is that fair to say, Dr. Genestri?
Very fair.
Okay.
To
So
answer
on
the
that note,
question, oh,
the
I was gonna answer that
dynamics,
question.
which aren't there because they didn't take the early retirement incentive, correct? The retirees that you have on the screen, were any of them do the retirement
Yes,
incentive? They were.
yes.
So normally replacing retirees with new teachers, there's a bit of a saving. So is there, at the end of the, I didn't understand if there was a savings in doing that or not.
Going forward, yeah, because we've already budgeted for, this year was the year that we took the hit, quite honestly, because we hadn't budgeted for, I'm sorry, last year was the year that we took the hit because we hadn't budgeted for the retirement incentive. This year, we've budgeted for the retirement incentive, so there is savings realized, yes.
There is. Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
To answer the question of the number of ELL students, we're at, it's a changing number as we have
Right, of
students
course.
transition in and out of the district. So we're at about 250 students right now.
And as far as, I mean, we always look at the potential for new builds around here with the taxes and things that will help us out. Anything on the horizon? Can we count Costco yet or not?
No, well, the good news is that you guys will hopefully Tuesday night approve the easement on the transformer to get them
Right, right.
power. So we're starting in the right direction. You know, I would expect, again, there have been a number of challenges in terms of assessments, obviously going to 100% at the town of Amherst. So yeah, I don't know if there's anything that's going to hit the books that would make a significant impact.
But not Costco yet because it's not built, right?
Correct. It's got to be built.
When you build
Be excited about Costco.
it.
I'm excited about Costco.
Oh,
Not about shopping at Costco. I'm excited about other things.
Revenues from time.
Any other questions for the board?
I got one more thought, and it's just, this is out there a little bit, but I've been watching on the news, the acting mayor of the city of Buffalo has started to press that he believes that they should get a larger percent of the Erie County sales tax. If I understand Erie County sales tax versus other counties, we're one of the few counties that they divide sales tax among school districts too. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, So, yeah, and I think their budget year is January to December, I think.
Correct.
Okay, so I mean, they could be looking at it this year, they could be looking at it next year, they could not be looking at it at all. It just, to me, it looks like a potential liability for us if they decide to go that route, that's all.
Okay. That's good. That's good to know. Well,
I don't know if he has enough power to make that happen.
I don't
We'll
know.
see.
I don't know. I don't know from that standpoint. So again, a lot of work to do. I just want my one last question, and I'm going to continue to operate under using the rollover to kind of help us kind of project, and we can have further conversations about it once we know staffing. So that's kind of my plan going forward. Obviously, it's to you guys, to you all to decide whether or not we want to do that. But in order to kind of project and have staffing, that's kind of how I'll operate. And then if you feel as though that you want to change that later, we'll change, certainly. So.
My personal thought is I don't think we can not use it. That and going right to that
Well, we'll see.
0.57 cap.
Yeah,
just-
we'll see. We'll see kind of how it goes out, so. Okay, that I am done.
Mr. Feldman, thank you very much
Sure.
for the hard work that goes into this. We
Sure.
appreciate it very much and indulging us in our questions.
Of course, no problem. Happy to do so.
Okay. I know the board has asked us to do a mid-year review of goals. And if you don't have it, I could resend it to you, but it all should be in your drive, the goals document called the
Board of Education goals.
Goals?
Board of Education Goals for 24-25. But I can share it with everybody again if they would like.
It's in the packet now. It's been updated.
Okay, perfect, beautiful. So at the retreat on October 16th, you gave us some direction as to what the goals for the 24-25 school year would be in terms of the Board of Education. And we determined that there were 5 goals that the board wanted us to focus on as a district through this year. So I'm going to ask Dr. Wilson for some help and guidance, and Mr. Feldman, as soon as he's back from his break, can help as well. But goal 1 was really around the strategic plan. We are in year 2 of implementation of the strategic plan. And I asked Dr. Wilson to comment, or if you want to come on up as well. I have added, and Dr. Wilson have added some progress reports as far as where we are in year 2 of the plan, and I will let her. You've already used that.
Good morning.
Hi.
So what you have here are our tracking documents. We have actually several documents that we use to track the strategic plan to really stay true to the goals that we set and monitor where we are and make suggestions on any tweaks or changes that we see fit going into the next round of the strategic plan. So we're in year 2, just finished up semester 1. In the first year, the tracking was a quarterly check-in and update. And because that was the first year, we really wanted to stay on top of where we were with the 3 goals. Once we got that first year established, we really wanted to look at going deeper into each one of the items. And many of these items are big ticket items and they take longer to really get going and under progress. And so you'll see that we now are focused on a semester update. So what you have here is an overview of all the items that you see in the strategic plan. As you go to goal 1, for example, you will see that there are 32 items if you count up the bullets that are listed off in the action steps. And you'll see that there are 32 there. And we just wanted to give a really simple way to look at where are we with them. Are they underway? Are we on track? Or do we still need to start something? And so you see here of the 32 in goal 1, teaching and learning, there are 19 that are completely on track and have met the timeline. Then there are 7 that are in progress because we are in year 2. So you'll see as the strategic plan, as you go through it, is year 1, year 2, year 3. These are all the bullets that are outlined in year 1, year 2, year 3. And in a minute, I'm going to go into one of those linked documents to walk you through how we're tracking it, so it makes sense to you when you're looking at it. And then you see that there are 6 items that are not started. And we have some notes in there about why they're either not started, where we are with them. And so I'm going to jump right into goal 1. To move.
It's in the drive.
Gotta click the little pop out. It might be off the screen because you're presenting. Should be over in the right corner, a little like
But it's off
arrow
the-
in a
it's off the
box.
screen. We can't pull it
Yeah,
over.
I don't know why it's doing that.
Try clicking and dragging the main screen over to the left and see it. No,
Oh,
maybe pull the side, like drag it over and then pull the side. Max are just goofy like that.
Might need to close it and.
oh, I don't want to do that.
This should open here.
Where's my
But I
undo button?
think look, if you.
Scroll
second.
button.
I know, but it's.
Let's just try this again.
There you go. When you,
No, it's
when you
open.
click on it, do the, click on it.
Go ahead.
Okay, sorry. Oh, that's not.
Yeah.
I thought I saw something different. Okay, so it's not working.
When you click on it, click where it says, click on it again. Click on it, the little blue square over a little bit towards me. There you go. Click on that.
No, nothing.
Just click on the
But if you
button.
There you
grab.
go.
There you go.
There we go.
Okay, yep.
All right. All right, so.
away.
For our purposes, there's a document that has even more information on it. But this is, we wanted to try to give anyone looking at it a simple way to understand where we are in the work. So teaching and learning, you can see, I'm going to call out the highlights. Anything highlighted in pink is either a recommendation from different groups that we that are monitoring this, or they're updates that we've decided. So it's either an additional language piece or an update to a suggestion that the team might have, where we might have to go into year 1. And really, once we got going on the work, we thought, oh no, that really needs to go into year 2 or 3. And so the suggestions are there. We wanted to track them to make sure that we don't lose sight of these are changes. So anytime you see something that we're saying, oh, that word doesn't fit there, or this piece needs to go someplace else, you'll see it's a strikeout, so that you can see where the changes are being made. You will also see behind each one of those pink highlights, a title of the group and when they made that recommendation. We initially had dates all throughout the year from last year. For this year, we just updated it to say that it was a year 1 update. So we have all those tracking elements. And the Teaching and Learning Committee was that subcommittee of DEI from last year. So they checked in on this all throughout last year. They were part of the quarterly checks. But then you will also see the Office of Curriculum and Instruction. So you'll see Office of OCI mixed in here when there are recommendations that is being made by that group. And so this feedback is compiled through the work of the whole department, Curriculum and Instruction, and then feedback from that larger teaching and learning stakeholder group, which included students, staff, teachers, administrators, board members, district office folks. It was a cross-section of all stakeholders. So I'm going to walk us through when you see something in year 3 that is grayed out. It means that, we're not in year 3 yet, but you might see there's some progress there. So for example, here we have some progress going on because we have done a significant amount of work on the math side of this particular item, and we're deep into the work of the ELA side. And so the monitoring piece is in progress for some of that work. It's grayed out because it is still year 3. But you'll also see some year threes that haven't been started yet. I will continue to scroll through. Where you see some reds, right, not started yet. It's like a domino effect because the item prior to it was decided that's something that should move to year three. We had it in year one. And as we did the work, you see that one was feedback from the Office of Curriculum and Instruction, year one. And it's really a high level, heavy lift that we needed other pieces to be in place first before we could really dig into that. So because we moved that, it impacts the year two work. And so you see the not started yet. This is actually in progress now. We are geared up right now at the high school to review all of the technology classes and course offerings and the business course offerings. The thing that happens as a result of that, though, is that as we start that work in this spring, it goes into next year. It will go into anything, recommendations will go into the course handbook for your review that year, so that the following year, those courses can be offered. So it takes some time to get the new courses included to make sure we go through the processes in place around adding new courses and going through the approval process through the board. I'll stop for any questions.
Those are courses that are not offered next year, but the year after that?
The recommendations will be courses that would be offered the year after that. When you're talking about a curriculum review and adding a brand new course, that is the process. Now, we are also in a very heavy process right now at the high school reviewing science curriculum. All of the science curriculum is in the middle of a changeover to match up with next gen standards. So we just finished up the biology review. We're going to be bringing something to you pretty soon around that recommendation. And you heard me say biology, not living environment. Living environment had been the name we've been using. We're going back to, guess what? Biology, but it was before. So the state is having that shift over, and that recommendation is ready to go, and we'll be ready to kick that off next year. The course is the same science course that's in the curriculum hand guide. Right behind that is Earth Science. We're kicking off Earth Science now. They will spend the same amount of time as the biology teachers to do the same review. And that is not a change of course, it's just a change in curriculum. So those courses are already in the course handbook. But that is part of the reason why the shift has happened with the domino effect of some of these things that are not started. A curriculum review requires the time to really unpack the curriculum that you have, unpack what's coming with any curriculum program that you're looking at. You have to include stakeholders of, the teachers who are involved in those areas, and really dig deep into that curriculum program and then make the recommendation, which, as you can imagine, it takes some time. So as we identify those new curriculum programs that will support the science, those will be coming each year. So we have a rollout that will take us to 2028. As you scroll to the bottom here, you'll see this is what is in that original diagram that has all three strategic plan goals outlined, but now you see the breakdown of how those numbers are being driven. Any questions?
A couple comments that I really like the fact when we visited the Syracuse school, I remember the director telling us, don't try and go too fast, too quick, or it's just not going to happen. I think this was the good approach to do this way.
Yeah.
And they kept stressing to us to keep this fluid. It's going to change. You're going to make other outcomes. So I really like the fact that you're really putting some conscious thought into this goal and not trying to do it too fast, because I think that could have been a downfall.
Yeah, thank you for that. It definitely speaks to our capacity. If we want to do it, we want to do it well. We don't want to overwhelm teachers. So for example, the math curriculum review that we did last year, or the year before, and now we're into year 2 of new curriculum. The literacy changes that we are implementing there, those are the same teachers. So we have to engage everyone in the professional development they need. And so we went with a phased implementation for the math. So So this is the second year of that math implementation, and we, at this point, everyone will be on board by the end of this year. They will have all had at least 1 year in the new math curriculum. For that reason, we wanted to make sure that we're doing it well, we're honoring what the teachers need as far as professional development.
So in the end, what you're doing something to improve the learning experience, and I would hope results
Mhm.
in the form of some grade or some assessment. Can you show that this is doing that?
So as we did the strategic plan, we want the next goal is to make sure that we add hardcore numbers to it. The recommendation of the planning team was to get through the first phase. So this first round, we will wrap up with this year and then add those numbers in. You'll see at the end here, there are goal outcomes. And these are some of the outcomes that we believe will happen as a result of this work. And we have many ways of tracking this. So when you're talking about engaging student voice, we have the MRA, which is a survey that we give through all of our Leader in Me schools, which all schools are Leader in Me schools now. And it measures, it's a survey that supports teachers, students, and staff in giving feedback in multiple ways: academics, leadership, and culture. And so you find that that feedback is really some really great feedback to drive this work, but then also graduation rate, attendance rates, suspension rates, and so on.
So in this transition, how are our students doing? Is there a way to tell us today that it's improving their grades, it's improving their relationship with each other, and are there hard facts with that?
There are multiple ways. When you talk about the whole child, there are multiple ways to really support every single student.
Well, I know what you're saying about support. I'm interested in where we are in results. How are the results due to this transition, this new strategic plan?
So part of the results are the results that we've reported out on in 3 through 8 this year. So take the math results from the curriculum rollout. Those students have now been in for 2 years. Last year's results is what we reported out on. Last year's graduation rates is what we reported out on this year. We also have quarterly reports that we track around academics across all the core subjects, and then attendance and behavior.
So it is being tracked. And were you talking about proficiency rates?
Proficiency rates for 3 through 8.
Because your proficiency rates, if I remember, were kind of flat for the last few years, even with the
Thank you.
additional knowledge of a greater poverty level. But I mean, in the end, we're trying to improve on that. And I'm just trying to get at, is this helping us improve on those results?
So
And where is
last
the
year,
data?
we were consistent with the year before, but the year before that, we had a significant increase. So it hasn't been flat for multiple years. So when you look at the results from last year, the things that we wanted to make sure we hit on, even though you're looking at the results remaining where they were, basically.
Roughly, yeah.
Not a huge statistical difference. The thing that we wanted to hit home is that we went all in on computer-based testing, which does impact some of that work. And we had new curriculum that was rolling out, which there's also that implementation phase that comes along with it. And so
Yeah, that's my thing here. Again, there's this constant want to change things. And what does it do in the results?
But
So
it's not just change. Okay, so this is me as a teacher.
please,
former
go
teacher
ahead.
now. Okay,
Please.
so it's
I'm
not
trying to
just change.
understand. I'm
Yeah.
not picking on
No,
anybody. I'm
I
trying
get
to
it.
understand. Go
It's
ahead.
improvement and it's progress into helping our students. And sometimes with a change like this that comes literally from curriculum up, right? So let's say that you're a 5th grade math teacher, which I can't imagine for the life of me, but we're going to pretend, okay? So you're a 5th grade math teacher and someone just
Wait a
gave you
minute, I
new.
taught my kids that.
Someone just gave you new curriculum that you have to teach, right?
Yeah.
Right out the gate, instantly, you're still really good at your job, but it's going to take you a little bit to like hit your stride, right? And it's going to take a little bit for the kids to say, this is a new way that I'm having to learn and I'm now having to use my iPad on this. So like the first year is going to have a lot of fluctuations and a lot of people just trying to get used to what happens. This type of change is not going to happen overnight. It takes time so that we're able to see the data points that you've presented. We're getting there, but it's not going to be going from here to here
in a year.
So,
Got it.
so I would
Why-
say
why
that
I'm a
with,
little
with all,
hesitant to accept some of these changes. Sometimes it don't come locally, they come from the elites.
correct?
Ivory Tower in Albany or whatever, Washington. So I'm a little bit of a pushback on some of that.
But I think
But
what you
you're,
also
you're
need,
accepting that and you're trying to make it work, which is good. You feel that it's a proper change we need to improve. Is that what you're saying?
So with the changing of, we have standards that have changed and so on, and going back to Ms. Jason's comment around the making sure you are consistent with what you are implementing and take the time to do it right. These changes do take time. But I think the thing that we should focus on is that we had two major things happening across the district last year that overall impact students' results. And for most districts, you see a huge dip. And you did not see a dip, which for me shows that we are headed in the right direction, and the growth is there.
That's good. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Kirk, I just want to throw in one more thing. For the next generation science standards, the teachers were involved in creating those new standards, including some from our district. So it's not just something from the Ivory Tower in this
Oh,
case.
We actually-
yeah, so there's local teachers from every district that actually, that's like a side job, I guess, where
Yeah.
they create the curriculum, they create
that's a
state
big-
assessments, they do
that's a-
all of that.
Yes,
Like
we
Dr.
actually have.
English, our chemistry teacher at the
That
high
is a
school
change
is
from the
huge in that
past, right?
initiative.
Yes, we actually have teachers who write
Absolutely.
the state assessments. We have teachers at the middle school, at the elementary school, and at the high school who actually are writing the assessments that the state gives. So they're very much involved.
My
Thank you.
daughter spends time at Cleve Hill. She was selected to help write the questions.
Yeah.
And it's
Seems
a
like we change things too
time-consuming
often.
thing.
It's a large task. I mean, so for us, we really had to stay true to how do we help our teachers manage this shift in how those assessments are done and preparing our students while also teaching them. So that's a person's whole job when you talk about writing those assessments or whole groups of people who come together. We want to make sure that our teachers are strong. And so we've really been focusing in on the professional development.
Are the teachers accepting and moving along with this for the most part or all?
They're very much involved. We
Okay.
can't do this kind of work without teacher leaders. It's really, they're involved. And so that helps with the buy-in.
And I want to say they were involved in the development stage of the strategic plan
Mhm.
through the teaching and learning committee, through the DEI committee. So there were a lot of teachers involved in writing the strategic plan to help with the buy-in piece. And that's always going to be a continual effort with buy-in, but I credit the Office of Curriculum Instruction, Dr. Wilson, Dr. Kozakowski, for pushing a lot of good professional development. But knowing that we had big teacher leaders in the room from the moment the pen hit the paper to write this was a strategy we used to make sure buy-in was there.
Thank you.
Questions? So what you have here, do you want me to go
Nope.
through? Okay. So what you have here is that overview of each of the three goals. And now that I've kind of talked through how it's set up, I won't go through all of it unless you would like to see more from any of the goals as far as how we're tracking it. But I'm gonna have a hard time opening it again.
So is the expectation like at the end of this year then, since we're doing mid-year, to look at this again, or is that,
We continuously look at it. So,
I mean, as far as presenting it to us?
oh, yes.
Is
yes.
that the
I think
expectation?
we did that last year, I
think
believe.
we
in-
did. I think
in
we did.
May or June, we kind of started looking at it, knowing that we don't know what, Regents exam scores are, graduation rates are yet.
It's
But
just
yeah.
now we're talking February to
Mhm.
June. That's only 4 months. I don't know
Yeah.
how much you can really.
Right. So we are constantly looking at what we can tweak, what we need to change, where there's something that doesn't fit right, it's out of sync based on our original thoughts and where we're going for the following year. We're gearing up to be ready to go into the next phase of the strategic plan because we're entering year 3. It's a 3-year plan. We are looking to move forward with that next phase. And so continuous tracking, and we can give a report whenever requested.
As kind of the spearheader of this or the leadership part of this, are you happy with how far you've progressed? If you had to give it a A, B, C, D, where are your thoughts? I know you want everything to happen now, but you know that can't happen.
I give us an A++. We're doing some heavy lifting. I mean, just to the lift that the teachers and the principals and district leadership took on just to identify, take, for example, the very first thing we addressed, which was the math curriculum. That happened in a rapid, it seemed to be rapid. It took a number of hours and days to get to that point. And we are fully implemented at this point with the new math curriculum, which is an extremely heavy lift. And that's just one of the elements that's there. We have a huge emphasis and focus on our Leader in Me programming. We have a huge emphasis on multi-tiered systems and supports, which, you know, cuts across academics, behavior, and social emotional. A number of things that are happening across aligning to next gen standards, and so on. And so as you go through this plan, it might be one bullet, and that bullet is a significant amount of work. And I'm very proud of the work that the team is doing to accomplish it.
You mentioned that Leader in Me, and we've seen some amazing things from our elementary schools. And now the kids get up to 6th grade and we're like, okay, can you give us a little bit of a report how we're doing as those kids are going to be in middle school? How are we doing with getting that Leader in Me program established there as well as the high school?
So the secondary has had an emphasis and a focus for the last year and a half of rebooting. So last year was a reboot year. We did several sessions in which we re-engaged the secondary schools, the middle school and the high school. We went through the signature seven habit training for all secondary folks and for our first superintendent's conference day, but we did some of that work over the summer. Some of you participated in that work. And we are now at the point where the middle school is having leadership days. They had one back in December. They are having another coming up in the spring. The high school has their Lighthouse team up and running. On this Tuesday coming up, we actually have a synergy session set up with all of the schools in which we're coming together to share across the work that the Lighthouse schools are doing at the elementary level to support and expand at the secondary level. So we put quite a bit of planning into that day, but it's just one of many days. These are all, I call them little pebbles that we're laying to build up to. The high school is at a place where we're ready to start talking about, could we have action teams? And I might be even coming to you all to ask you to participate in something that could support the work that I'm not ready to announce yet, but we'll get there. And I think you'll be pleased and it'll be a good connection for you all.
So our kids going from elementary to middle school, they're going to have some of the Leader in Me there so they don't lose momentum, because we've worked so hard to get these kids in that leadership role.
Yes, they have right now, the middle school. So we've had students there now for 2 years who've had really found strong foundational Lighthouse School experiences. And we are, they have Lighthouse teams, they have action teams at the middle school. They've done leadership days now with their first one back in December, first one since the reboot, and then another coming up in the spring. We're looking to, as they shift to the high school, making sure that that is in place at the high school. So it's really a reboot because they've all had this, right? But we stepped away from it, the pandemic, you know, there were other factors in play there. But the buy-in is there. There's a lot of positive energy at the middle school, and it's starting to build at the high school.
Here people call it a program. It's not a program, it's a culture.
way of being,
It's
yeah.
a culture that we want embedded in all our schools.
Mhm.
Thank you.
I appreciate the stopping midway through the entire plan,
Mhm.
being that we're at a year and a half done and a year and a half to go.
Mhm.
I appreciate very much the snapshot of how we're doing. And I think that, in my personal opinion, this goal is the goal that brings our academic side and our every student up to the standard that we expect here at Sweet Home. So thank you very much for your work.
Thank
A
you.
lot of work.
Dr. Wilson. I know she said, you know, you get one bullet point and you don't know the amount of work that's behind it because you don't get to see it every day. We report out to you and you get a snapshot of it. But I think the one that I'm very proud of all of the work, but I can't begin to tell you the amount of hours that was put into revamping MTSS. I think Dr. Wilson kind of underestimated and the people that are involved. It's a weekly Thursday meeting. I got to sit in on it a couple weeks ago, and it is evolved. It's been going on for a year and a half now. That meeting, that team has developed the process, is implementing the process, and that was a wholesale change with a lot of our staff that really took a lot of pushing to get buy-in on it. And so we're seeing that now in year 2, Dr. Wilson, and that's from Mrs. Barilari is leading that team every Thursday. And the amount of work there to review the social and emotional learning of 3,800 students and the data points that are available to us that needs to be reviewed and how it's trickling down to the buildings and down to the teachers is a massive, massive effort. And we're seeing gains there that we're very pleased with. So I want to just point that one out especially. So.
Does anybody have any questions or comments on goal 1? Okay.
All right. I might just start this over because this is kind of weird to me here, but okay. Goal 2. We are this is in regards to our planning for our next major capital project. And I am pleased to say that we have made tremendous progress this year. It started in July. So as you know, when I entered the district 3.5 years ago, we were coming out of COVID and there were spacing issues that really made us take a deep dive into the enrollment numbers here in the district and looking at our potential growth and projecting our potential growth. Our elementary buildings in particular had been cut up at that time, but not necessarily enough to handle the needs of continual enrollment growth, plus the special education needs of our students. So we began looking at this and really formed a building use committee that was all precipitated by the fact that we were still, after COVID, kids were still eating lunch in the classroom because we cut up the cafeterias to help us with everything from speech services to PT services to OT services. Music were being performed in cafeterias. And then we kind of had a slow, gradual, over the past 3 years, roll back to class sizes being at pre-COVID numbers. So the Building Use Committee, and realizing that we had debt from a previous capital project falling off, we started planning for our next major capital project with a target goal of having a vote in 2025, late 2025, December, to approve a capital project that would address spacing issue and, quite frankly, well-maintained but outdated elementary buildings. So I'm pleased to say that we are on track for that. It started this July, where we had a meeting with the facilities planning at state ed, to talk to them about the possibility of additions at our elementary buildings. And then when state ed looked at our numbers, it was important. It's always important to get their approval to move forward, because their approval means state aid would come back on those plans. And so they did green light us to look at 3 of our elementary buildings for additions, and that is simply based on our enrollment and projected growth of enrollment at those buildings. So when we got the green light to move forward with additions or planning for additions at Maplemere, Heritage Heights, and Glendale, we started working with our architects, construction managers, and our financial planners to build the scope of the project. We are on track for a 2025 public vote. We have met with our architects as soon as last week, our construction manager and our financial advisors. We've met with them twice. Last week, we really tried to develop an approximate scope. And we think that at $74 million or so, that we could have a tax neutral project. But there are also other needs that our athletic use committee is also looking at as well that would go into the particularly the high school fields to help develop useful life out of there for more than just one sport at a time, in particular the turf. So more details on that to come, but we are in a really good place. We have a meeting at the end of February, again with the team. And then we plan to bring that plan or scope and finances to the Building Use Committee for review. The Building Use Committee is made up of the superintendent, 2 assistant superintendents, 2 board members, 4 principals, the director of special programs, the director of transportation, the director of buildings and grounds, 2 parents, and the teachers, the president of the teachers union, to review those plans and to tweak, make recommendations, to prepare for a presentation to the board, probably later this spring or early in the summer, on the full scope and financials regarding the project, to prepare to present to our community. So we are in a great spot with this. We are on track with our planning, and we will have a lot of work to do this spring to prepare that presentation for you. There, Mr. Ravenel.
So again, so I understand this as best I can here.
Yep.
Got projects coming off and this project in place in terms of the budgeting and the spending.
Yes,
Maybe some additional things you want
there may be,
to go beyond that.
which would be right now initially, and I'm not saying that this is what we would bring to you. It could be multiple propositions. So the taxpayers would have a decision to make. But right now, our priority is the elementary buildings and redeveloping those into for 2 things. 1, to address our spacing issues, and 2, for continued 21st century learning.
There's a lot of concentration on what the state covers for us.
Yes. Yes.
Sharing.
Yes. Yes.
This is the same building use committee that studying the bus
Yes.
situation.
Yes. You bring up the state aid point. I want to make that sure that our community understands that it is our, a lot of the hard work that goes into the planning phase is to tap every state aid dollar we can, because obviously that lessens the burden on our taxpayers. So everything we do is in the mindset where we need to get every dollar we possibly can out of that. Now, I will say this as well. The district has done a great job of funding its capital reserve. And according to our financial advisor, every $1 million we have in the capital reserve that we could use for this purpose is $2.5 million worth of work by the time we get the aid back on it. So we'll be looking and at our capital reserves, continuing to fund our capital reserves, so we have more bang for the buck to do the work that we need to get done.
Thank you.
And Dr. Janestri, remind me if I'm remembering correctly, you had said that the Building Use Committee would be meeting with our architects and campus.
Yep. So that's our next, we're going to have a meeting at the end of February to kind of prepare for a presentation for the Building Use Committee. Then if the Building Use Committee is in a good place, obviously we want their feedback on where we are at. We'll develop it because all the key stakeholder groups are represented at the Building Use Committee. Then we will prepare a presentation for the board that's been endorsed by the Building Use Committee.
Thank you.
Be allowed to ask who the 2 parents are.
Sure. Ms. Andrea Lashinsky and Mr. Bill Vaughn. Yeah.
I mean, I am a parent too.
You are a parent.
And I'm a parent as well.
There you go.
Yeah.
Too much into specifics, but just so our community knows, this project is as big as it sounds, will touch every building.
Yes. So thank you for saying that. So there are also, in addition to renovations and of course, the things the public can see, This project also needs to address what we call the building use survey. And every 5 years, districts are required to do a building condition survey. And in that survey, our architects determine what's at end of life, what has 3 years of life, and what has 5+ years of life in there. So we will be addressing things that are at end of life, which that list is heavy, including a roof at the middle school, which right now, that could eat $6 to $7 million of that budget. So, and that is needed. That is needed. It is end of life.
Just a
Roofs
little
are
history
expensive.
On that roof at the middle school. Replaced it. We had a hailstorm covered by insurance. Get the business guy.
Yeah.
But they got it replaced again. So
Yep.
it's already due to be replaced again?
I don't think it replaced the whole thing. It replaced the damaged areas. And now it is at end of life.
That roof was put on the building in 2002. By the time we get shovels in the ground, it'll be 2027 summer earliest. So you're looking at replacing that roof in 2028. So you're looking 26 years that roof's been up there.
You don't have any leaks or anything?
No.
Is it gonna last? You think, I mean,
Oh,
I
yeah,
know
yeah.
you can't, but I mean, that's 5 years,
Well, I'll credit the district for saying that,
It is.
on the last BUC, on the last building condition survey, it had 3+ years
Okay,
left. So
okay. Well, that's kind of what I'm
We planned
asking,
for it.
what they.
we plan for it.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, we're not at a
A
critical.
lot of bubble gum, Mary Ann.
Fingers in holes, no. So we're in a very good spot. And we're excited about what this could bring, so. Goal 3, our DEI goal, I'm gonna bring Dr. Wilson back up here. There's been a lot of talk in the past several weeks about DEI from a national level. I can say that it came up at the superintendent's meeting on Thursday regarding the word especially diversity. We believe strongly in this initiative. We believe that it is closing gaps, as Dr. Wilson presented a few months back to the board. And the work that this committee is doing is really been really important because there's students on this committee as well. And we want to continue this work. Obviously, federal funding is very important to us and very important to districts across the United States. And we will adjust and pivot if necessary. However, I'm very confident in saying that this work will continue, and we will figure out a way to get it done because it is having an impact. So I will let Dr. Wilson talk about goal number 3.
So an update on the DEI committee and the work that is being accomplished there. We looked at the committee, the goal coming out of last year and into the summer, the planning from our leadership cabinet was that we really wanted to see the DEI initiatives push into the building and see evidence of it in the buildings directly with our students. And so we had a shift in reorganizing the committee. The larger committee became even larger as we pulled in the subcommittees and made sure that each one of those subcommittees was represented on the larger committee. And the thing that we did and we wanted to focus on the most was increasing student voice and parent voice. So in the previous year, we had a couple of seniors that were involved and they had graduated. And once they graduate, we don't have those students work with us anymore. So we wanted to build capacity over time. And so we have students who are represented from the middle school all the way through the high school at different grade levels. So that as one group of kids graduate, we have still students who are connected to the work, but then we can re-engage some students coming in on the younger end at the middle school. So the reorganization helped us grow in size and pull in more community members and more parents also. All in an effort to be inclusive. So nobody was turned away. Anybody who wanted to participate in the work, we engaged. The team has, since that reset, has participated in professional learning opportunities through about restorative practices, for example, because we want to use that lens to look at things like our code of conduct, to make sure that we are really striving for our district mission, right, of every student, one community ready for the future, and really building that sense of belonging. And so if that really is who we are, when people look at our documents, to get that sense, and that's our push with this work. So at the district level, the team is working on that revamping of the code of conduct, and we had a really great meeting last month around that work. We also had some significant work around the questions that we want to use to drive the school communities. And so what you see here is the team has decided that they would have driving questions that we would send to the school communities. And the driving questions would be questions that each school community should be thinking about as they are working on their school improvement plans. So each school has a comprehensive school improvement plan. And again, we want the community, we want each school community, our greater community, to get the sense that this was all done through that, creating a sense of belonging. And so we have narrowed it down to 4 main areas that the driving questions are in, and we're actually at a place where we're going to be finalizing it in the upcoming week. So we have assessing the current state. Each school they're going to be asking themselves these questions as they are designing their next school improvement plan. Professional development, what are we doing to engage our students and our families on the professional development side as far as what the teachers get to make sure that that engagement continues, fostering empathy and understanding, and then student voice and engagement. So those are some big pieces that we are hoping to, or we're working towards completing as we wrap up this year. The goal of the code of conduct, which is a very large one, is a heavy lift. It's one of those, it looks like one bullet, but then it requires a lot of work. But the team is fully invested, and we have individuals who have stepped up from the larger committee to form a small subcommittee who are going to put in extra hours to do that work to feed back to the committee. So that's where we are with DEI.
Have we thought about, I know you said that, you know, our seniors that were working on the committees have moved on and obviously have gone on to their next level. Have we thought about keeping some alumni in our committees? If they're local?
Yeah, it's a good question. We're actually in contact with Hunter, who is doing a significant amount of work that ties back to our strategic plan, because you know he was a heavy voice there. But if they are local, he's local but not local, so he's in Syracuse, but then he's back. So as much as possible, we try to connect. It's really powerful to see how that has impacted his lens. But if we continue this work, I would hope to stay connected to our students who we're able to connect to.
Just an offer, you know, is like I said, with our students, some of them do stay local. If we could keep them connected, you know, and hopefully as alumni and later on in life when they're parents and they stay in the district, they stay connected. Just a thought.
Absolutely. We also have, as an umbrella or a portion of our DEI committee, we have our student team, our ACT team, Alliance for Cultural Transformation. And they are working and building up to that next challenge to change. It's also scheduled to happen in the spring. But what they're doing that's different this year is they are working on items that they can take back to their school communities and lead back at their school communities to engage their fellow classmates in this work. So that's another component that is not listed there, but is also a part of the DEI initiative.
I had a question. So when I think of DEI, I'm thinking, you know, respect for each other, basically. So can you make the jump, since we are that data district, that we do use data? Can you say, we think we're being successful because our referrals are down, or we're not seeing as many bus referrals? Is there an actual number that we can connect this to? So instead of just my gut feeling, I can say, you know what, this is some solid data that we can say, yeah, we're more respectful for each other.
Yeah, so there's, off the top, there are two places that we look and we constantly monitor. So we keep quarterly reports on behavior and attendance. So take the middle school, for example. They have a climate and culture committee that we kicked off a couple of years back. Now they're into their second full year of this work, and they track that kind of data on a regular basis. We are in the process of kicking that same work off at the high school. And you do see the evidence of the reduction of referrals and suspensions.
So we are seeing those go
Yes.
down as well as in our because for elementary, I think it's mostly busing type referrals that I think we.
Yes, so there's been a number of restorative practice sessions that we've used. I think you observed
were at
one.
them, yes,
Yes,
I
you observed one, in which we help our students with the things that they need to think about when they're on the bus that will help them be a positive participant on the bus. And so there are a number of things that we pull. So the quarter reports, we're just wrapping up with those and we have
Get
that.
those? Is that something we can get just so we can see that, hey, we are making some progress?
I just got one today and I'll start distributing in data snapshots or.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah, mostly what you see in the updates that Dr. Genestri shares, some of that is pulled from the quarterly reports that we have.
Thank you.
I'd say too, the other impact that gets me really jazzed, things like the middle school, advanced courses at the middle school, record numbers. I think we doubled the size of advanced math and advanced science, double the size of the number of students taking it. At the high school, we removed archaic, prehistoric prerequisites in those. And that's the work of the committee. So it opened the door for all kids to take more advanced courses, which has been a huge.
One of our goals.
One of our goals.
I would like to see those kinds of numbers, just because then, it backs up the work we're doing so that we know we are headed in the right direction and not just our gut feeling that this
Yes.
is
No,
working.
yeah, they're all backed by numbers and we're seeing it. The rewriting the code of conduct that. I don't know how long ago that was written, but to look at it and have it done through the lens of equity and inclusion
Eye-opening.
is a big, big, big task that the committee is taking on, and we're excited about that work as well. So,
Thank you.
yeah.
Just out of curiosity, if you asked students their experience with our DE&I environment or our climate or our changes, how do you think they would respond? Or have students been asked? Like, we can look at our hard data points of like attendance and behavior and things like that, but when it comes down to the kids, because that's who we're doing it for, have they been polled or surveyed or asked?
So it's all embedded in our work, right? So everything we do is we try to have everything be through the lens of DEI. So I go back to that survey from Leader in Me. That's why that survey is so important. The MRA, it cuts across three major areas: academics, leadership, and culture.
Right.
And student voice is embedded throughout all of that. And each school gets a report in each one of those areas. The students have a voice in that, parents have a voice in that, and staff have a voice in that. And so we use those if you are at times at a school meeting, a PTA meeting of some sort, you might see one of the principals reporting out on that, but we can actually share those results.
That would be awesome.
The other thing we're seeing, our student ACT team has had a giant impact, especially when it comes to planning our Challenge for Change events. Over 200 students participating in those.
Saw that picture last year and I was jealous because I wasn't here yet, so I didn't get to go.
Yeah, those have been big. Our ACT team continues to meet. And that's probably 30 students, and they bring them back. One of the things we worked on this summer during our admin retreat was we've got Leader in Me, we've got DEI, we've got strategic plan, we've got, I'm missing one, but how do we bring it all together? And we really are leaning on Leader in Me to be the big umbrella for all of it. Because we don't want
them to be layered. We want them all to work together. And, you know, we're hearing great things out of this Superintendent Student Advisory Board too, where the entire COS team is meeting with students 2-3 times a year at the buildings and having lunch with students just to see what's going on, to have those conversations and the impact all of these programs are having. So, you know, we're pretty positive. One of the big things that we've worked hard on since Dr. Wilson is student voice. And we're really proud of the gains we've made there.
I have a question, and it relates a little bit to the goal number 3, but just in more general, what we've been talking about. Is there some place or you could provide perhaps at some point in time over the next month or 2 months, a list of every committee in the district? Like, I mean, I'm talking about,
That,
Yeah.
because he
Well-
sent that to me at the beginning and I was like, oh my gosh.
I don't mean just that we're involved in as a board, but I mean down to the building level, because in, you know, my world, we try to have as few committees as possible.
Yes.
And when I come over here in this world, there's a committee for everything. And part of that, I'm just wondering is, one, as a board, it just would be nice to kind of have an understanding of who, you know, these are all the committees, because we hear about them, right? And then, you know, their objective, and also are they mandated? Because some committees, like the audit committee, we have to have, right? And other ones. And then maybe who's within district office overseeing that. But and maybe how frequently they meet. And then kind of part 2 of that is, I think that sometimes a challenge can be, whether it's for parents or even I would imagine staff, is that a lot of trying to make sense of all who's, you know, is there a way maybe or some value at some point in time to look at bringing some of these committees together or consolidating, like, hey, we can do a little bit of, so people don't have to meet twice in a month. We can bring 2 committees into one, things like that.
That's a great point, Mr. Liable. That was the rationale and the thinking behind pulling the subcommittees of DEI into the larger committee, because it became, I'm on 3 different committees just for DEI. I'm meeting 3 different times, but are we talking about something different? We're really not. Our work needs to be aligned and connected. And so there's actually, we see Leader and Me as the umbrella, the way of being, right? As a way to drive everything. And there's a way for us to, as many of you know, some of our staff members went to a conference just last week or the week before. And some of that work was, how do you align? How do you pull all those committees together and help everybody see the connections? And then decide, okay, can some of these come together and make one committee? And so we really are engaged in that work.
I think before the COS team takes me up to the 2nd floor of the high school and hangs me out ankles, if I add one more committee to our list, we have to do a better job of consolidating. We're asking our students, our public, our teams, our administrators, our teachers for a lot of time, and they have been super gracious because they care deeply about the school and about this district. And so we need to respect their time, and we'll be looking at how we can consolidate a little more. And that's been a talk that I'm glad you brought that up, Mr. Level, because that's been a talk that we're having almost daily of how we can bring it all together. So the work that we did in the admin retreat this summer was to put it all under one umbrella and try and consolidate there. The work with DEI was taking the 5 committees and making it into one, but making sure that the work continues. I think we got some work to do at looking as well. And I'm glad I have that list somewhere.
There's
Ms.
9.
Ms.
I've got the
Anton.
list with links. So if you want me to forward that, so
would
that
be
you don't
great.
have to do that
That would
again.
be great. Consolidating work
Okay.
right there.
So my last question and concern was, is this push into the classrooms, does it have results? And I think Mary Ann asked the question and you answered it right. Is the referrals and discipline issues, has that been coming down? Is it less? Is there less kind of confrontation between one group and another?
we're actually tracking it at a much higher rate also, as well as we see the reduction happening. So understanding that a quarter, right, there are 4 quarters in a year. When you see a smaller reduction in one quarter, keep in mind that you're going to have the next quarter and the next quarter. So seeing those smaller reductions add up over time, by the time you get to the end of the year, you'll see that major reduction. The other thing that is, I think Dr. Genestri already called out, we presented some results earlier in the year. Take, for example, the global assessment that we give our global social studies assessment that we give our high school students. And that's a challenging test. It has been for many kids across the state. And what we saw is that not only did we do very well in what we presented to you, but you saw the gaps closing between the subgroups. That's DEI at its finest.
I think that was our goal from the beginning when we created the committee, was to examine gaps and try and close those gaps amongst our groups. And so when we saw those results a couple of months ago, we're like, it was very positive.
So what you're telling me is this gap was closed because you did this. What did you do?
There's,
Close that gap, just make that
it's all of the
more
work.
available to
Yep.
all the students? How did
It's-
you do that?
It's all of the work. So if you take this, it doesn't boil down to one thing.
Professional development was a big piece of it.
Yeah, there's a number of things that get spelled out throughout the strategic plan, through DEI, which is all embedded into that. What the teachers do day in and day out, how we help our students be good citizens and at school, to be positive members of the community and be engaged fully. There's you go through a number of things that help wrap around every student. So that whole child approach, that's why that goal was so important to everybody at our cabinet level. And when you talk to anyone, they say that's the biggest goal, because we have to hit that first to help everything, academics, future focused and so on.
There are so many pieces to that. So I would say just one out of the many pieces, data team meetings, right? So we grab data over our assessments. So whether it's a state assessment or whether it's an internal like Ames Web, for example. So we'll take that data, we'll see the progress each student in the school is making. We'll present that to the principals. The principals will present that to the teachers, and then we'll put interventions into place. But knowing that we're tracking each individual student.
That makes sense.
Yeah,
Thank you.
is that's part of the whole picture. So
I just,
a lot of pieces there.
I just don't know the pieces. So thank you. That's good. I appreciate it.
If I could just say one more thing too, because I know I've spoken a lot, but I think this kind of information is important because we're going to be asking the community to support a big building project. Every year we ask our community to support a large budget. And these are the kinds of things I think they should know so that they know that we are making a difference and it's almost like a report card, what we're doing here, that we are making a difference and that we're using their tax dollars to help our community and help our kids move forward.
Thanks, Dr. Wilson. Goal number 4, I don't know if you want me to get into much detail, but our budgetary plan always want to enhance or maintain programming while at the same time being fiscally responsible for to our taxpayers. So Don, I think, presented a lot on this goal this morning. And we're looking at, we've developed a preliminary budget, which is a rollover budget right now. We are allowing for continued curriculum programs in ELA, math, and STEM to move forward. As Dr. Wilson outlined, new curriculum. I think she presented in her first year that our math curriculum, for example, hadn't been looked at or reviewed or changed in 11 years prior to Dr. Wilson's work in the Office of Curriculum Instruction and all of our teachers' work with that as well. We're doing the same work right now in ELA and the STEM enhancement, not just during the school year, but over the summer, in the enrichment programs that we're doing in science, technology, education, and math, not education, the E. Holy mackerel. STEM.
Engineering.
Engineering, thank you. Holy mackerel. And math has been impressive. And art, we should say art too.
Art, yeah.
We'll have a report based on art, by the way, on Tuesday night for you, but the Panther logo contest has been overwhelmingly great. So over 300 submissions, but we'll update you on that on Tuesday night more. But so incorporating art is important to us as well. And this budget does that preliminarily, of course, and then will be approved in April. But we're in a good place with our budget. The district remains financially in a great place. And of course, always keeping the taxpayer in mind to ensure that we are fiscally responsible with their money. And then finally, goal number 5, as you know, AI is an important piece. We are heavy in technology at Sweet Home, thanks to your support. And we believe in our one-to-one initiative. We believe in our advanced technologies when it comes to everything from Wi-Fi to instructional programming and technology. And artificial intelligence is really evolving before our eyes as we speak. And so we appreciate the board's willingness to engage in this topic over the summer during our retreat. You gave us great direction and where you want the district to go. And we have developed policy around that. So what the policy is doing is setting certain parameters in areas of like identifiable information of our students, making sure that that information is secure and safe, while at the same time allowing the policy for AI to evolve as AI evolves itself. So we have taken your feedback over the summer. We have presented that feedback to our technology committee. That technology committee was responsible for developing kind of the first parameters and first draft of the policy. The policy then went to the policy committee for review. The policy committee had great feedback before we presented it to the board, and now it's in its second reading and up for a vote on Tuesday night for adoption, for possible adoption once you vote. So once you vote on that, the work obviously will continue, and the technology committee is making great headway in getting AI and AI implementation into the classroom as well. So we've made great progress here, always continuing to ensure that the district data is safe and secure. You may have noticed last night in my note home to families, our Google suite of products was being reviewed by state ed, and there are several products that are not in compliance with Ed Law 2D that are being removed from our systems as of March 1st. So security is number one, the most important thing. Academic integrity. This policy allows for academic integrity and teacher discretion in developing that integrity as well. And I know our technology committee is working with our teachers to make sure that academic integrity remains strong. So we are in a great place with AI, thanks to your efforts over the summer. And we, and this policy allows us to grow. And that was an important thing as well. It does not hamstring us in any way. So we don't expect to come back to you regarding policy unless there's an evolution of AI that I'm not even, and I'm sure there are, that I can't even think about right now. There's probably a million of them that I can't even think of right now. So appreciate your work here.
We're gonna start using DeepSeek instead of.
We were gonna ask that. No, we're not.
There's one that I don't.
That one will be on the no-fly zone.
Yeah.
Nope.
Cheaper than all the other ones that
Yes.
are run.
Yeah, let's not.
By the way, it was spoke about probably somewhat a lot.
Yeah.
At DC when I was
DeepSeek
there. And a lot of it is securing student information.
Yes,
The first piece of that, and the other is the integrity piece. So
yes.
We're right on the right track with it.
Yeah, and we saw, I know I was with Mr. Johnson quite a bit and Mr. Feldman in New York at the NYSBA conference. Lot of AI sessions there as well, and those were the two main topics. Oh, you were, and Mr. Ravenholt saw them as well. Well, we were all there together. So yeah, we're in a good place there.
Very important issue.
Yes.
I'm really glad we took the chance to do this. I think it was important just to update us on these goals. I think this was a good idea.
Yeah.
I like it.
So a lot of great work, great team, and I'm really appreciative of you, because you give us this guidance to work with, but really appreciative of our district office staff, our administrators, our teachers who are knee-deep in all of these goals. And their input has been super valuable as well, and our staff, who's just doing a great job. We're a very, very lucky district, very, very lucky district, and couldn't have better people to get this work done on behalf of our kids. That's all I have.
Dismissed.
It's up to the board president.
Does anybody have anything else? Great. Can I have a motion and a second to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?